Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has Sharingan in High School of the Dead. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Ultima and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Surprising End, New Beginning. The stone faces of Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju glared deeply into each other, untouched by time, much like the two crimson red eyes, one pair slitted, the other with a familiar coma-like pattern, did. Two teenage boys, both looking to be around 13 years old, stood on opposite sides of the legendary valley, the Valley of the End. The site of the legendary battle between two godlike shinobi, Hashirama and Madara. The very place they stood used to be covered with trees, flowers, animals, and life. Now, it was a gray crater, overrun with an endless amount of water. A testimony to the power the two possessed. No amount of time could heal the scar left behind by these two. Now, it seemed as if another battle of just as much proportion was taking place. On one side stood a blonde-haired teen, wearing a strange bright-colored orange and blue jumpsuit. His hair was long and shaggy, and deep crimson-red eyes, with demonic-like slits reflected anger, betrayal, sadness, and determination. On his cheeks, the strangest birthmarks. 3 thick and dark lines on each cheek were curled up, responding to the snarl on the blonde's face, as fangs larger than the normal humans poked out, blood leaking from the corners of his mouth. The teen looked much like a fox, but the strangeness did not stop there. Over his hunched-over body was an orange and red cloak of sort, energy bubbling off of it. Above his head were 2 long rabbit-like ears, and behind him was a long and slender tail, both formed out of the energy surrounding him. This was Uzumaki Naruto. Across from him was an equally twisted visage. Long dark, almost purple-like hair, with 2 long bangs framed the face of the Sharingan-wielding Uchiha. As a snarl was placed on his face, a dark cross-like, resembling a 4-pointed star was placed right above his nose, over sickly gray skin. The teen's dark blue shirt was ripped and tattered, and his white shorts stained with blood. From his back, a pair of wings, if they could even be called that, as they resembled more of a pair of hands, complete with extended nails and webs connecting the fingers, cast a shadow over the young teen. This was Uchiha Sasuke. The only thing these two at the very moment had in common were strong ideals, and a piece of cloth with a metallic plate placed on their foreheads. Carved on the plate was a leaf of sorts, stating that these two twisted shinobi belonged to none other than the village hidden in the leaves. Konoha. Crimson-slitted eyes narrowed as they glared into the equally menacing eyes of the twisted Sharingan. To him, the sound of the roaring waters, the numb feeling in his right hand. His skin smoking from the toxic power that consumed his body. The metallic taste of blood. The searing soreness and pain of his injured flesh. His damp hair sticking to his sweaty scalp, and stained with blood. The blurriness in his vision. The dark voice that repeatedly whispered in the back of his head, telling him to murder the person before him, to end his pathetic existence. The cold air brushing against him. None of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was here and now. Sasuke, his voice was low and dark, sounding as if 2 people were speaking at the same time. From the other side, the Uchiha made a tsh sound, and moved to stand from his crouched position. What? You going to babble even more about bonds and such? I told you, Naruto, the time for words is done. We settle this here and now. A small smirk grew on the purple-tinted lips of the Avenger as he spoke those words. A feeling of complete ecstasy overwhelmed his being as the power from his curse seal flowed throughout every inch of his body, the sharp pain in his shoulder almost completely gone. Don't do this, Sasuke, just come back with me. The small smirk left the winged warrior's face in the blink of an eye. Do you think I'm going back now? After all of this? He gestured to the ruined landscape, the blood-stained waters, but most importantly, he gestured to them. To their transformations, to their power, and to the true meaning behind this battle. A battle of wills, to see whose fire burned brighter, his vengeance, or their bond. 2 warriors, 2 friends, 2 brothers. No, it's too late to turn back. You see, Naruto, this was our destiny. Just as the 2 who battled here before us, and the never-ending water, signifying an endless cycle tells, so are we, destined to fight, until one of us can no longer go on. Naruto remained silent, but a low growl emitted from his throat. Your silence tells me everything I need to know. You can feel it just as much as I do, this is meant to be. You hate it, but you can't deny it. The whiskered teen snarled even more, his mouth parting as steam rose from the back of his throat. Maybe you're right, maybe this is meant to be. He spoke as he raised his good hand, the sharp nails, that resembled more of demon claws than anything else, flexed, as a bubbling mass began to grow from nothing. You're still a fool. If you would have shown up on time to the exams, you would have seen me kick destiny all over the place. Just like I did then, I'll do it now. The mass in his hand began to glow a bright blue, and took on circular shape, as a small maelstrom raged from within it. It soon changed, however, as the orange and red cloak began to invade the bright blue ball of energy, turning it into a sickly purple and red color, the sound of howling winds echoing from all around it. Sasuke smirked at the teen, and crouched down, gripping his right hand tightly. From nowhere, bright streaks of pure white energy began to grow. Soon enough his hand was swallowed by a streak of pure white energy, with tints of blue, the sound of thousands of chirping birds echoing throughout the valley. However, just as Naruto's attack responded to his energy, so did Sasuke's. The white mass turned a sickening black, and the chirping morphed into screeching. Time seemed to slow down as the two locked eyes. Then, in the blink of an eye, they charged. "Naruto!" Sasuke cried as he cocked his hand back. "Sasuke!" The blonde followed, his good arm following the Uchiha's lead. Everything stopped. The two extended their hands, and called out their respective techniques' names. Chidori. Rasengan. The two corrupted attacks collided, and the world around them exploded in a brilliant show of lights. The screeching of birds, and the sound of howling winds echoed through the whole valley. The water underneath them picked up speed as waves began to flow. Cracks appeared on the earth around them. It seemed as if the two were shaking the very foundation of the valley. From in between the two attacks, a bright orb formed, and it slowly began to expand, swallowing the two young shinobi whole. From within the orb of light, the two stood facing each other, on invisible ground. They looked completely different, however. Instead of red eyes, ocean blue stared into onyx black. Blonde hair was shorter, and the whisker like marks thinner. Fangs no longer extended from outside of his lips, and no longer was a fiery cloak of demonic chakra over him. As for Sasuke, long bangs were shorter, as well as raven-colored hair, the end curling up into multiple spikes. The star-shaped mark no longer over his nose, and his skin was no longer a sick gray. The hand-shaped wings were gone, leaving two large tears behind his shirt. The two did nothing but stare into each other's eyes. Slowly, they both took a step forward, and extended their hands, the index finger and middle finger out. Then, both hands connected, and a small smile made its way onto both of their faces. For a second, a younger version of the two stood in their place, and in the blink of an eye, they were gone. The orb began to grow even more, anything that touched it slowly giving away to its power. Cracks began to form from the middle, and slowly but surely, the two were shown, both attacks still pressed against each other until they finally broke. Slitted eyes narrowed as Naruto tilted his hand up, avoiding the Uchiha's heart, and let the Rasengan fade away, his nails scratching a deep gash through Sasuke's headband. Sasuke grunted and let his attack fade as well, before forming his extended hand into a fist that slammed into the blonde's chest, but instead of piercing it, only left a light bruise. The energy of the orb began to slowly fade and flux, tendrils of energy shot out into random spots. In the center the two gripped each other's hands and pulled close, both knowing full well that the battle was not over. With their hands interlocked, and their feet floating in midair, the two did the most logical thing they could. Rearing their heads back, they slammed their foreheads full force into each other for a powerful headbutt, unknowingly channeling the last remainder of their chakra outwards in a powerful pulse. The unstable orb of energy reacted to the powerful chakra pulse and began to shake wildly. This was all happening before the eyes of a silver-haired masked shinobi, as he watched his two students fight to the death, or what it seemed like to him. The orb began to react even more violently, shooting upwards into a column of pure white light, as the two shinobi within fell slowly to the ground. The column began to expand, as the silver-haired shinobi raised the headband that covered one of his eyes, revealing a familiar coma-like pattern. "Shit! Naruto, Sasuke!" The Jonin moved quickly, evading random blasts of pure energy from the orb, watching as whatever the energy touched disappeared completely. However, it was too late. In a bright flash of light that momentarily halted him, the two young shinobi were gone, along with the orb. The valley was completely silent, as the tall man fell to his knees in shock. That day, Hatake Kakashi cried for this first time in years. That day, the course of history was changed forever. Naruto screamed as he felt his body being pulled from all over in random directions. It felt as if his arms and legs, hell, everything was tied to multiple horses, and they were all racing in opposite directions. He could feel even his insides twisting and being ripped apart. From a distance he could hear Sasuke's screams of pain as well, meaning they were both caught in this spiraling tunnel. He could feel his body being tossed around, like he was stuck in some sort of tornado, yet he could see nothing, because if he opened his eyes, the intense white light would blind him. He had no chakra left, and he could feel the fox's chakra working at an incredible rate to keep him from being ripped apart. Is this it? The teen mused to himself. He had never felt such an overwhelming pain. His mind was literally on the brink of shutting down. Images danced before him, of his friends, his adventures, his goals, his nindo. The teen growled at himself, at his weakness. No! I can't give up now! As his will grew stronger, the blonde felt a new power coursing through him, stronger than anything he had felt before. In the endless white, his body began to glow with a silver energy. It consumed him, and before he knew it, the pain stopped. The teen felt a strange tingling in his eyes, before finally succumbing to his body's wish, and falling into a blissful sleep. The last words he heard were that of the fox trapped within him, whispering a single word that would forever change his life. Rinnegan. Takagi Saya was a strange girl. From birth, she was gifted with a high intellect, advancing faster than most kids her age. It did not stop there, however. Unlike most people, she was also born with light bubble-gum pink hair, making her even stranger in the eyes of others. As a child, the children used to pick on her for her strange hair color, and as she grew older, her body grew as well, faster than most girls her age. She developed quickly, and young boys her age, and even older noticed. Between the negative attention and the lust-crazed attention she got, she learned to keep to herself, and use her intellect to defend herself from the world. Sure, she had some friends, such as Komuro Takashi, a childhood friend, and her developing crush, not that she would admit to that, but yes, she was a strange girl indeed. Which is why tonight she found herself leaning over her room's balcony. Yes, balcony, you see, her house was a mansion, and her family was rich. Another thing to add to her strangeness. Her golden brown eyes gazed at the star-filled sky, searching for nothing in particular, more like enjoying the peace and quiet. In less than a month, I will be attending high school, the pink-haired teen mused. Her face was set in a bored expression. Most kids would be excited, or nervous. She let a smirk frame her perfect face. Good thing I'm not most kids. Letting out a yawn, and stretching her hands outwards, she looked at the dark forest that surrounded her home. She had always been slightly afraid of the dark. It was cold, an unknown territory. Saya hated the unknown, she hated what she could not understand. She was a genius, capable of outsmarting her teachers, even university teachers. So not knowing, being in the dark, was a fear, and she hated it. With an elegant twist, she took a single step forward, until a sudden breeze passed her by. It was surprisingly strong too, as it lifted her small ponytails, and made them flutter uncontrollably. Her eyes narrowed suddenly, and her mind raced. That's strange, there should be no kind of strong winds tonight. Suddenly, her balcony rocked, almost as if an earthquake hit it. The force of the shake made her fall to her knees. From behind her, a bright flash occurred, illuminating the darkness around her. Her eyes widened in fear, and she curled into a ball, her hands over her head for protection. What the hell is going on? Did someone let off a bomb? From the open glass door, her mother and father rushed out. Her father was a large and powerful man, with a hardened face and dark hair. He was tall and muscular, and in his hand was a long katana. Her mother had a darker shade of pink hair, and soft eyes, although you could see much experience within them. In her hand was small pistol, fully loaded, gripped tightly, finger on the trigger in case anything was to happen. These two were Takagi Soichiro and Takagi Yuriko. Saya! Yuriko cried as she ran to her daughter's side. Placing her hands over her daughter's shoulder and back, she helped the slightly shocked girl up, and dusted her off, while Soichiro cried orders into his phone. I want every available guard on the premises to surround the western part of the field. Don't allow anyone in or out. I want to know what the hell just happened, and what is going on. Understood. The pink-haired teen sighed, and gave her mother a small nod. I'm fine, Mom. She could feel the older woman give a sigh of relief. Come on, let's get inside. She cooed. With a slow nod, the two entered the room, Soichiro following closely behind. They walked down the large steps, as Saya watched personnel run wildly around, serving their purpose, and following her father's orders. From the large double doors, a single man stepped out. She recognized him as her father's second-in-command. His name, however, escaped her. Sir, the area has been effectively closed off, however there is a problem. Well, what is it? The man appeared to swallow, before speaking. Sir, there is a boy in the middle of a large crater. He is gravely injured. Soichiro's eyes narrowed, and his expression hardened. A child, he thought. With speed and grace, he sheathed his blade, and motioned for some nearby men to come to him. You three. Stand guard over my wife and daughter. His eyes turned back to his second-in-command. Take me to the child. If you asked Saya what possessed her to speak that very second, she could not tell you why, but she did. Wait. Daddy, take me with you. I want to see him. Soichiro looked towards his daughter, and glared into her eyes. She did not flinch. Something burned inside of her, and he knew he would not win a verbal argument at this very moment. It would do nothing but waste precious time. Very well. Yuriko, stay close to our daughter. You three, your job is still to protect them. The three saluted, and the group stepped out of the mansion. Saya continued to watch the hired guard work as if they were trained soldiers. The three stepped into a large car, and she sat between her father and mother. She could hear the engine start, but that was the only sound made throughout the small trip. Her mother squeezing her tightly, and the small looks her father sent her way were enough to let her know they were worried, and that she was safe. They need not speak. Imagines danced past her, until the car finally stopped, and they stepped out. Small fires rang out in the clearing, and men with guns were stationed everywhere, while some surrounded a shadowed figure. What surprised her, however, was the crater the downed figure lay in. It was bigger than a regular swimming pool, meaning that the landing was not a soft one. She wouldn't be surprised if the person was dead. He's breathing, one of the men cried. Her eyes winded, that was impossible. Leaving the safety of her parents, for her curiosity she rushed towards the crater. Move! She hollered, her father's side taking over, as she yelled commands. The men, knowing who she was, and seeing their leader and his lady walking calmly behind her, did as they were told. Saya shoved the last person aside, and gazed at the center of the crater. Her eyes widened. There was a boy, looking about 13, a year younger than her, with spiky blonde hair that was currently stained with dirt and blood. He wore a bright orange jumpsuit that was stained with even more blood and grime. His body was smoking, and he was bleeding from his mouth, nose, and even ears. The strangest thing was the blood that fell from his eyes, almost like tears. She was shocked, and frozen from the child's condition. Her breath hitched when a single finger twitched, and slowly, one eye opened. She expected blue eyes, thinking he was European or American from his distinct hair color. But no, what she saw was hypnotizing, breathtaking, it defied all logic. His eyes were a purple-like gray, with several rings surrounding the pupil. His mouth opened slowly as he gazed at her still form. "S. Sakura-chan," he mumbled weakly. Then, his eyes closed one more. She could have sworn he was dead, if not for the faint heaving of his chest. She felt her mother's warm arms cover her, and steer her head away from the scene. She heard her father give out even more orders. It did not matter, however. Her eyes were still wide in shock, those rippled eyes imprinted in her memory. Her life just changed completely, and she had a feeling she was not the only one. Chapter 2. 9 and 4. Drip. 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 Ocean blue eyes opened to a familiar setting. Dark hollow pathways, rusty walls stained with a dark liquid. Naruto would rather not find out what the liquid was. His hands stayed completely dry, as did the rest of his body, even though he was submerged in a murky water. His blonde hair was darker, as was the rest of his body. The darkness of the sewer-like area seemed to wrap around his very being, sucking the life out of the bright colors he wore. From above, there was a complicated system of pipes, some big, some small, interlocked with each other. From some you could see a slight blue tint, while the others had a red glow. However, there seemed to be a new addition. In the very center was a long, straight pipe that pulsed with a silver and purple-like energy. "That's new," the teen mused to himself. Standing up, he took in his surroundings once more, before turning his eyes to the long, seemingly endless single corridor before him that was obscured in darkness. With a gulp, the blonde took a single step forward. From nowhere, a giant wave of pure red burning chakra washed over him, freezing him on the spot. The amount of killing intent made his throat dry, and his pupils dilate, while the rest of his body tensed in preparation. Squeezing his eyes shut, and steeling his resolve, the blonde moved once more, taking another step, although this one felt much heavier as the pressure pushed down on him, trying to force him to his knees. His ocean blue eyes hardened, and he began to leak his own chakra, coating himself in a blue energy. It wasn't much against the overwhelming red chakra, but it helped. With a deep breath, the blonde continued forward, knowing what he would face on the other side. His very own personal demon. The Kyubi no Kitsune. As he walked, the darkness before him seemed to slowly but surely consume his vision. Strange as it was, the blonde still knew the way. One final step, and in bright flash of light, blue eyes focused once more on a large empty room. Solid square walls surrounded him on every side. The murky waters were still the same, but a sort of mist hovered above them. Multiple pipes were placed throughout the ceiling and the walls. Above him, the main silver pipe was still there, although it seemed to intertwine with the red and blue pipes as well. All of that was minor detail, however. The biggest eye-catcher was the tall cell that stood before him. In the center, a small paper tag with the word seal written in kanji. Naruto inhaled once more, his eyes visibly hardening as he took a single step forward. In the blink of an eye, the large pressure was on him once more, this time full force. The whiskered teen fell to his knees as his eyes widened once more, his mouth opening as he gasped for air. From the cage, a red mist began to flow. It seemed to clear a path through the mist as it made its way towards the blonde. Naruto watched as the bubbly mass of energy circled him, and he felt himself being lifted up from the murky waters. Drawing upon his inner power, the blue aura surrounded the blonde once more, and he found the strength to move. Flailing his arms around, as the red mass of energy closed in around him, the teen managed to free himself and fell into the waters with a splash. Just in time, too, from the cage, a giant furred claw slammed some of the spaces between the bars. The claw was bigger than a house, and could probably crush one like an insect as well. Human, a low and dark voice growled. It sent ripples into the very waters the blonde was now sitting in, frozen by the pair of slowly opening crimson-slitted eyes before him. This was his second time meeting the fox, and he couldn't believe how overwhelming it was to be in its presence. Shit, the teen thought, this power, it feels like I'm being suffocated. With the opening of the crimson eyes, a row of sharp and pearly white teeth followed, each one bigger than a fully grown human. A red glow began to outline a figure twice as large as the Hokage building. Orange fur, long rabbit-like ears, with a black strip that surrounded the blood-red eyes. Finally, 9 long and slender tails floating lazily behind it. This was the most powerful of the tailed beasts. This was the Kyuubi no Kitsune. You dare face me, after what you have just done? You idiotic fool! The beast growled out. Now, Naruto was known for a lot of things. 2 of the most well-known qualities were 1, his lack of respect for authority and power, and 2, his short temper. As if forgetting that he was facing the most powerful being in the elemental nations, the whiskered blonde stood and raised his fist, shaking it menacingly at the endless ocean of chakra before him. Who the hell are you calling an idiot? The teen roared, a vein popping above his head, as his eyes suddenly lost their color and turned large and white in a comical fashion. Kyuubi growled once more, before the snarl on the fox's face turned into a smirk of sorts. I'm calling you an idiot. Now then, if you know what's good for you, you will silence your pathetic self, or else. The fox stopped, and left it hanging. Naruto growled, much like the fox did. You can't do anything to me. The fourth seal will stop you. True, it will stop me from devouring your pathetic human self, but what is stopping me from crushing you mentally, and leaving your body nothing but a brainless vegetable? The fox may have forgotten to mention that if it were to do that, then the blonde's body would shut down, which would mean he would die, but he could have some fun as well. Besides, dying was something the 9-tailed beast refused to do. Naruto let his arm drop, and sweat fall from his scalp. Why, yeah, well, if I become a vegetable, then I'll be easy pickings. Remember our deal, if I die, you die. Kyuubi blinked, and stared at the orange and blue-coated teen. Well, maybe he isn't so stupid. It mused. Besides, like, you could do that to the future Hokage. Uzumaki Naruto-sama. Take back, the fox didn't know whether it wanted to sweat drop at his container's foolishness, or crush him for it. The crushing sounded nice though. This seal, I have never hated something more in my life. Well, expect Madara, but it's about a tie. The giant fox retracted his claw, and placed it before him, then laid his head down on it. You might want to get a new goal in life, human. Confusion swept the blonde's features. Huh? What the hell are you talking about, fox? Crimson eyes glared at the much smaller figure, before closing them. If I wasn't so drained from keeping us alive, you would regret speaking to me as if you were my equal. Lucky for you, I had to use almost all of my power to keep your body from being torn to shreds. Naruto opened his mouth once more, but suddenly stopped, the phantom pains of the Tunnel of Doom, as he calls it, fresh in his memory. Kyuubi, what was that? He asked, voice suddenly quieter. A single slitted eye opened. The fox watched the teen carefully. That was a rift. My chakra is potent enough to cause tears in dimensions. It is how I escape the eye of the world, and rest in my own. Your chakra, which is arguably potent for a human's, and the Uchiha's cursed chakra were already damaging the dimensional barriers. When you added my chakra into the mix, you created the orb that transported you both to a smaller pocket dimension. Naruto did not miss how he snarled when he mentioned Uchiha. It only lasted a second, and you were both free. However, when you decided to head at each other as a final decisive attack, you both unknowingly sent out a powerful pulse of chakra that destabilized the rift. It went out of control, and you two were in the middle of it. Without my chakra, you would have been torn to shreds and scattered across the multiple dimensions. Naruto gave the fox a blank stare. You have no idea what I just said to you, boy. You lost me at dimensions. With a growl, the fox opened both eyes and raised its head, bringing it closer to the bars. You fucked up. Now, we're in another world with no way of returning to our original one. No becoming Hokage, no date with that pink-haired loudmouth you're so infatuated with, no more of that perverted sensei of yours or the toad sage, no more of the big-breasted blonde, no more Rookie 9, no more shinobi. The chances of that Uchiha surviving are slim to none. You are alone. Suddenly, it felt as if the world landed on his shoulders. Naruto fell to ground, his expression frozen, his eyes reflected disbelief, horror, fear, anger, and pain. The word alone continued to swim around in his head. His body began to flow with a silver energy once more. The teen felt his eyes burning, and tears began to fall. The QB watched this all with growing interest. The familiar chakra of his father began to overshadow his own. Naruto tilted his head back, and screamed. The scream morphed into a roar, almost similar to the QB's very own. The murky waters began to shake, and red chakra from behind the cage flowed outwards towards the blonde. His whisker marks began to grow darker once more, and his eyes morphed, his blue eyes dissolved into purple, and from his pupil multiple rings began to surround it, extending all the way to the ends of his eye. The change did not stop there, however. The pupil morphed into a slit, and the eye took on a red hue. The walls began to shake, and the pipes that ran along them began to glow and pulse even more. Shit! He's having a mental breakdown, the fox thought to itself. The fox began to pull back its energy. The raw anger and pain the teen was releasing was attracting his own chakra to him. The energy feeding off of the negative emotions. Boy! Calm down. There's no use destroying yourself over this. This is a new chance for you and me. No one knows of us, you can start fresh. Free all the promises and burdens placed on you. Naruto continued to scream, his features morphing even more, his skin peeling back revealing blood and tissue. The seal began to tear as the blonde drew on even more power. From the outside, it had been a day or two since Naruto's body had been found. It was currently being held in one of the underground rooms in the estate. The room was made exclusively for situations that arose in Japan, such as tsunamis or any other form of danger. The teen's body began to morph and change once more. Power began to radiate from every inch of his body, making the room itself shake. Tables and chairs fell over. The very floor underneath the unconscious blonde began to crack from the power. The machines connected to the blonde were beeping quickly. From above, the ground began to shake as well. The residents of the household fell over and quickly grabbed on to whatever they could, believing it to be a powerful earthquake. Soichiro was away on a business trip, mostly to handle any media that would try and discover what had transpired 2 days ago, and Yuriko and Saya were also away, both taking a mother-daughter shopping trip to ease their minds. The only residents of the Takagi household were the guards, cooks, and maids. The tremor did not stop there, however. All across the Tokunosu district people could feel the earth shaking. A young purple-haired woman holding a wooden katana fell over as her father rushed to her side. Another young woman with long brown hair walking with her mother fell over as well, her mother gripping her tightly and ducking for cover as the streets shook. At the central mall, Saya and Yuriko felt the quake as well, and rushed for safety. A young teen with black hair ran inside his house for cover, while another young man with brown hair holding a water gun dropped to the ground and covered his head. In a small office, under a table was a buxom blonde, her hands covering her head, and her chest bouncing up and down as the earth shook. On a small playground, a little girl was rushed inside a nearby building while a small dog barked at nothing. Back in the underground room, the walls were already forming huge cracks, and the room itself was covered in a red hue. Naruto's body was shaking uncontrollably, and even more of his skin began to peel back. From around him, a bone-white substance began to form. Kyuubi continued to pull back its energy as the seal grew weaker and weaker, the blonde's screams grew louder, and his power grew immensely. Shit! Why does this have to happen now? I can't even use this to my advantage with how weak I am, the fox thought. Naruto continued to scream, and the seal continued to falter and weaken. The fox could feel how many tails of chakra were being drawn into the blonde. 7. He's going to blow himself and everything else around him to pieces if this continues, it roared. Naruto, however, was more focused on his rage, his anger. 13 years of pain and misery, and he was finally starting to make friends, and now it's all gone again. He was all alone. My, what a mess. A smooth and deep voice rang out. A rough but soft hand was placed against the burning shoulder of the emotionally wrecked teen. From inside the cage, the Kyuubi's eyes were widened at the man before him. Spiky blonde hair, and familiar blue eyes. A long white coat fluttered behind him. On the back, the kanji for fourth. Naruto suddenly stopped screaming, the strange man's hand oddly comforting. Yandame, the fox uttered. Suddenly, Naruto's world was enveloped in a white light, and he found himself in a plane very much like the one he and Sasuke were trapped in. His appearance was back to normal, and he faced one of the greatest men to ever walk the shinobi world. The fourth Hokage. Hello, Naruto. The man spoke with a warm smile. A smile he had seen many times. It was a smile usually reserved for someone special. He had seen it many times before when a father would smile at a son. Why, Yandame, the teen stuttered. The tall blonde gave a chuckle. Yes, although you can call me Minato. Although I would much rather prefer if you called me Dad. Just like that, the teen's mind snapped. Naruto began to laugh nervously, before full blow outright laughing hysterically. Alright. This is great, I must have died. My father? The fourth Hokage? Ha! If this is heaven, then where is all the free ramen? He was surprised when the older blonde gave out a hearty laugh. Ramen! You're our son alright. Naruto blinked a couple of times, and then stood from his sitting position. This isn't a dream, is it? He asked. Minato shook his head a no. I'm not dead, am I? Again, another no. Then you really are my dad? He asked. Minato gave him a warm smile, and a small nod. Naruto lowered his head and felt his knuckles grow white as he clenched his hands tightly. His hair shadowed his eyes, but you could see the tears that slowly began to fall. The fourth frowned and stepped forward, closer to his son. Naruto, I'm sore. He was cut off by the blonde suddenly chuckling, and raising his head, a wide grin on his face as he wiped the tears away with the back of his hand. My dad is the fourth Hokage. The chuckling exploded into laughter. Take that, Sasuke team, and your mighty Uchiha bullshit. Minato stared at his son with wide eyes, before a smile settled on his face. A sharp pain exploded from his stomach, and in the blink of an eye he found his son's fist buried into it. That was for putting me through hell. Naruto's arms wrapped around the much larger man's body, and he brought him into a hug. This is for I don't know I. Minato wrapped his arms around the 13-year-old and squeezed tightly. It's okay, I'm sorry, Naruto, for putting you through all of that. The older blonde listened to his son's quiet sobs, and rubbed his back in a comforting way. But here you are, safe and in one piece. Stronger than I could have ever hoped for. I placed Kyuubi with you, because I knew only my son would be able to bear the hatred, and come out fine. He felt Naruto's grip tighten, and he could not help the tears that fell from his cheeks. This was what he wanted, to be able to hold his child. I've always been watching. From your very first steps, to your very first mission. I've always been there. Not how I would have wanted, but it was enough. The two let go, and blue eyes stared into blue. I placed Kyuubi with you, because I felt only you could handle the immense power. You seen, when your mother... My mother, the teen whispered. What was her name? Uzumaki Kushina. She was as fierce as she was beautiful. She loved you very much, as did I. We both loved you more than the world itself. Naruto gave a smile at that. His parents did love him. He had never felt so happy in his life. As I was saying, when your mother gave birth to you, there were some complications. Minato's expression grew serious. The night of your birth, a masked man infiltrated the village. He had brought the Kyuubi under his control, and sent it on a wild rampage. He was the reason the fox attacked. I did battle with him, and learned some things from it. He is incredibly powerful, bending time and space to his will. His most important attribute, however, was his sharingan. Naruto's breath hitched at the mention. He was an Uchiha, an incredibly powerful one, and there was only Uchiha that I know of with the power to control Kyuubi. Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara, the teen repeated. He had heard of him from the academy, and from Sasuke. The most powerful Uchiha, and a god amongst shinobi. Yes, somehow he lived. On the night of your birth, I had no choice but to seal the fox. At the time, I had an idea. You see, Naruto, to face such a foe, one would need immense power. The Kyuubi was a force of near infinite power. So, I gifted that power to you, my son, so that when you would face Madara, you would be even more prepared. For I have no doubt that even without the fox, you would grow to be an incredibly powerful shinobi. Naruto continued to listen to his father, his ego growing as he slightly puffed his chest out with pride. Minato chuckled at that, and ruffled his son's hair. However, I did not factor in that you would cross worlds. He spoke. That doesn't change anything. Wherever you may go, there will always be hatred and evil. Jiraiya-sensei told me once that I was to bring a major change to the world. He said I was to finally bring peace. However, he was wrong. I don't think it's me. I think it's you, Naruto. You who will bring peace to the world. He finished. Naruto's eyes widened as he gazed up at his father. Those same ocean blue eyes reflect unyielding belief. Belief in him, his son. My time is running out, Naruto, but know this. I love you. I always will. I believe in you. I know you can do it. Wherever you may go or end up, I know you can bring change for the better. After all, I am your son, the smaller blonde finished with a wide grin. Minato matched his grin. The world around them began to dissolve, and they found themselves back in the cage, although things seemed to be much calmer. The yondaime turned to the cage and placed on hand on the seal. The paper began to glow, and was returned to prime condition. Kyuubi, take care of him, the fourth whispered. The fox gazed at the man that was the cause of his anger, then at the shocked blonde as he watched the hole in his stomach seal up, and the familiar markings of his seal glow. Very well. I may hate you, but I have always sensed something familiar from that child. His awakening of those eyes proves it. Minato gave a grateful nod, and turned to his oblivious son, his eyes lingering on the blonde's very own for a second. Naruto, when you wake up, I will have left some things for you. I sealed them within your old seal. Now, my time is up. Remember. I love you, son. His eyes turned to the giant fox behind the newly formed cage. You two place nice now, he stated with a grin. Naruto watched his father slowly disappear, his eyes showing nothing but pure determination. I promise you, Dad, I will not let you down. As if reading his son's mind, Minato gave him a smile that said, I know you won't, before vanishing completely, leaving only the smaller blonde and the fox behind. Things are always interesting with you, boy, the fox commented. Naruto gave a wide grin. He began to scan himself, noticing that for some reason, he felt lighter, stronger even. He stopped when he noticed his reflection in the murky sewer waters. Everything was normal, except for a pair of ringed eyes that replaced his usual blue ones. Being Uzumaki Naruto, he did the one thing he knew how to do. He freaked out. Kyuubi! What the hell happened to my eyes? He questioned as he stared at his reflection. The fox gave a snort, and watched the blonde flail around in amusement. Boy, you have what is called a dojutsu. Much like the sharingan. Yours, however, is called the rinnegan. The blonde's eyes widened, as his mind raced. Yada! I have a super badass eye thingy like Sasuke now too. He suddenly stopped celebrating, and turned to the amused beast. What does it do? The fox grinned. I could tell you, but that's no fun. The most I will tell you though is you should cut off your chakra circulation to your eyes. I would highly recommend you keep it a secret. It would be enough to explain why you have whiskers. Your eyes are another story. What? No fair. How am I supposed to be a badass if I don't even know what they do? Kyuubi yawned and closed its eyes. Not my problem. Naruto grumbled, and plopped himself down in the water. His eyes shut as he contemplated what had just happened. Say Kyuubi. The fox growled in response. You're right. The fox snapped one eye open lazily. This is a new world, and a new start for both of us. You're not a monster, and I'm no longer a shinobi. So let's start off fresh as friends? Kyuubi opened both eyes, and lifted its head once more. The blonde was reflected in his crimson eyes, a wide grin on his face. You pathetic fool. I have no need for friends. We stick to the basic rule. You die, I die. So I'll help you for now. Naruto gave a foxy grin. It's a start, he stated. Out of my domain. I must rest. With a mental push, the blonde found himself flying across his mindscape, the Kyuubi growing farther and farther. Until in a bright flash of light, everything was gone. Back in the cage, the fox stared at the spot the blonde once occupied. Uzumaki Naruto, maybe you are the one the old man spoke of. Naruto awoke with a yelp as he found himself connected to multiple machines, all beeping. His blue eyes scanned the room to find cracks formed along the walls, roof, and even the floor. Knocked over tables and broken objects scattered around the floor. The most interesting thing, however, was that before him, or on top of him actually, over the seal were two objects. One was a three-pointed kunai, and the other was a book. The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Ninja. The blonde read aloud. He opened the book and found a picture of his very own sensei with a toothy grin. Written by Jiraiya the Toad Sage. The blonde could not help the smile that made its way on his face. He had been spending a lot more time with the perverted old man, almost every day until the recent events. That made Naruto frown. He was in a new world, his old one gone. He had no way of getting back, that he knew of. Sasuke was still out there, maybe dead or alive. He had a dojutsu, and he just learned of his parents. Things had gotten too complicated too fast. Either way, he was Uzumaki Naruto, son of the fourth Hokage and of Uzumaki Kushina. He would not be backing down. He was ripped out of his thoughts when the door to his rec room opened suddenly, and a tall man holding a katana stepped in. A surprised look on his face. Naruto gave the man a sheepish grin and a small wave. Hi, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. So it begins. End. Chapter 3. Welcome to a new world. Soichiro stared at the grinning blonde with an unreadable expression. His dark eyes scanning the blonde's body, completely ignoring the destroyed room around him. There's barely a wound on his body. 2 days ago he was covered in blood and bruises. The man thought. There was also the fact that when the young teen spoke, his Japanese was heavily accented. It took a lot to understand the teen's introduction. Uzumaki Naruto, what a strange name. He mused. Naruto, on the other hand, was beginning to sweat as the slightly intimidating man continued to stare at him with a piercing gaze, as if he was staring into his very soul. Why hasn't he blinked yet? The blonde thought to himself. The two continued to stare at each other. Unintentionally, Naruto gripped the tripod kunai in his hand tighter, seeing as it was the only weapon he had in reach. Soichiro saw this, and placed one hand out, as if to tell him to relax. If he was any other person, Naruto would have listened, but being in a new world, drained of most of his power, and in unknown territory, add the fact that he was a trained shinobi and also a powerful one at that, well, he would rather be safe than sorry. Relax, Uzumaki-san, I wish you no harm. Naruto blinked. What the hell did he just say to me? Seeing the confused look on the blonde's face, Soichiro sighed inwardly. Please relax, I mean you no harm. He spoke louder and slower. Naruto continued to stare at him, his mind racing. His way of speaking, it's familiar, but I can barely understand it. Naruto swung his legs off the bed, and let himself drop, slightly annoyed at his size, and at how silly he must have looked. Soichiro noticed the annoyed look on the boy's face and held back a smirk. He was pretty short for someone his age, it seemed. If the Don had to guess, the young blonde looked to be around 13, a year younger than his daughter. The blonde bounced on his heels a little, getting the feeling back in his legs, and stretched his arms. The book he received from his father left on the bed behind him, but the kunai was still gripped tightly in his hands. Soichiro once again saw this, and decided it'd be best to not hold the sharp blade in his hands. Bending down, he placed the katana on the ground and then slowly came up, both arms out in a I mean no harm gesture. Naruto understood what he meant, and placed the kunai on the bed behind him. The blonde still had his guard up, of course. Even in his weakened state, he could still fend off whoever the man before him was. He could sense no chakra from him. He was brought out of his thoughts when the man suddenly spoke, his voice deep and low, demanding respect. Whoever he was obviously a leader. My name is Takagi Soichiro. Naruto gave a nod, showing he understood. It was hard, but if he broke down some of the words, he could understand. You were found outside of my estate, heavily injured, and in the middle of a large crater. You are in my home, my staff has been keeping you alive. Not like you needed it, he added inwardly. The spiky-haired blonde before him looked good as new, save for some of the signs of fatigue and the slightly red skin. The Don's eyes narrowed. His skin looks like it went through major burns. It looks fresh too, like it recently happened. The dark orbs drifted to stare at the bright blue ones. Considering his strange appearance, could he have also been the reason for the sudden earthquake that happened recently? His eyes lingered on the ocean blue orbs, watching them take notice of his sudden staring, and even more surprisingly, harden, much like a solider. Could he be some sort of super solider? It is possible. I have to take in every possibility. After all, it's not every day a teenage boy appears from thin air, looking as if he just escaped a warfield. Naruto, however, was having thoughts of his own. Why the hell does he keep staring at me? The blonde gave it some more thought. Granted, I did sort of just come out of nowhere, and he did find me seriously injured probably before I started healing. Meh, whatever, he needs to stop with the staring. Stealing his eyes, he pointed at the much older man rudely, and spoke. Hey old man, quite your staring. It's kind of creepy. Soichiro was caught off guard by the sudden outburst. His trained ears understand some of what the heavily accented blonde was saying. Creepy old staring. A small smirk came on the older man's face as he continued to stare the still pointing blonde, watching as a vein pulsed on his head. What the hell are you smirking about? You have quite the big temper for such a short boy, Soichiro commented, the smirk still in place. Now that Naruto understood, his head grew 2 sizes, and his eyes went blank once more. Who the hell are you calling short, you bushy-eyebrowed bastard? Soichiro felt his eyebrow twitch, understanding the insult perfectly. He could already tell this boy had a way of getting under someone's skin. Calming himself, the man made no verbal response. Instead, he reached down, picked up his blade, then turned around and motioned for the blonde to follow him. If he felt good enough to talk, then he could walk. Naruto watched the older man turn around and make a follow-me gesture. Reaching behind him, he grabbed the book and the kunai, then followed the strange in his eyes, man out. The two walked up a set of stairs. The walls were dark, and there wasn't much light. The trip was relevantly silent, and slightly awkward in Naruto's eyes, but it could be worse, he could be a prisoner. Reminding himself that he was still in unknown territory, the blonde continued to scan around him for any escapes or anything he could use to keep himself alive. Reaching the door, Soichiro stopped and turned to the slightly surprised blonde, giving him another once-over. Judging by the weapon in his hand, he might not be used to large amounts of technology. His eyes scanned the kunai, a kunai of all things. What a strange choice of weapon. Could it be that just as some of us still follow the way of the samurai, some have chosen to honor the way of the shinobi. He mused. Before Naruto could once again ask what the man was looking at, he twisted the knob on the door and stepped out, the whiskered teen hesitantly following. Once he stepped out, he felt his eyes widen and his mouth drop. He had never seen anything like this. All around the house were expensive crystal-like things, pictures of random things he couldn't begin to name. The house was tall, and made out of a different material than he had ever seen. Everything looked so advanced. I mean, back home, he had seen similar things, but never on this scale. Soichiro continued to watch as different emotions crossed the blonde's face, the main ones being curiosity and shock. So my theory might be correct after all, the Don thought. Naruto continued to admire the expensive furniture and carpeting, and this was only the hallway. The Don stepped in front of the blonde, obscuring the much shorter boy's view with his large body, snapping him yet again out of his trance-like state. "Come, boy," he stated simply. Naruto looked at him and processed the words, before nodding and following after the man, his eyes taking in the strangeness. The blonde was captivated by the strange things he was seeing. As they walked by the windows, he could see a large field, and outside, large metallic contraptions standing still, some moving around with people inside of them. Finally reaching the double doors of the Don's private office, Soichiro pushed them open, and nodded to the two guards standing beside each door, giving them a small sign, while Naruto gave them an awkward once-over. Stepping into the office, the blonde had to admit, it was nice. There was an expensive carpet, with a large desk, a small square object placed on it. At the corner was a picture of the man, Soichiro, and an older woman who he presumed to be his wife, with a younger girl with light pink hair, which had to be his daughter. There was also a small lamp behind the picture. Papers were neatly stacked, and there was a small circular thing on the desk, with a bottle of what he presumed to be alcohol on top of it. All over the walls were portraits and framed certificates. There was a large windows with expensive-looking curtains, overlooking a garden and a small pond with what seemed to be koi fish. "Sit," Soichiro stated. Pulling up a chair, the blonde nodded, and sat down, facing a plain old wall. Until the older man grabbed a remote and pressed a button, the wall opening up to reveal a small rectangular object. Naruto stared at it curiously, and watched as he pressed another button, and the screen lit up, and people appeared talking to each other. Naruto's eyes were glued to the plasma screen television, shocked at how advanced this new world was. Soichiro gave a smirk as he walked around his desk and took a seat in his favorite chair, his ears picking up the voice of one of the news reporters. "We are here in the Tokanosa district talking to one of the victims of the surprising and strange earthquake that transpired not even half an hour ago. Sir, what can you tell us about this event?" The man looked to be in his early 40s, and shaken up. "I don't know. One second I'm driving to the store to buy some groceries, and the next I lose control of my car, while the very ground I was driving on starts shaking uncontrollably. Almost crashed, I tell you." The woman gave a nod, and moved the microphone back to her. "Indeed, a surprising and random occurrence, following up the bright flashes that occurred 2 days ago. It seems like the Tokanosa district is getting its fair amount of interesting activity this week. More on that, and the earthquake tonight at 8. Soichiro's eyes drifted to the blonde, his thoughts wandering as he watched him continue to stare at the screen. Could he have been the reason for the earthquake? It already took enough to convince the media it was a small vehicle crash, and to hide the crater. Having to explain an earthquake will be much harder. Naruto, however, was completely unaware that he was the reason for such happenings. Instead, his attention was focused on the technology before him. Holy crap! That's so freaking cool! I have no idea what the hell they're saying, but how did they get in that box? He thought excitedly. He was actually taking the fact that he was in a new world pretty well. A cough from Soichiro caught his attention, and he turned his head to face the Don, watching him lower the volume of the television. "Now then, I understand I must speak very slowly and use the simplest words I can for you to understand me. Your variation of Japanese is much older, and so harder to understand from what I can tell." Naruto gave a slow nod, showing his understanding, although it was hard to do at some points. "Uzumaki Naruto. Can you tell me why you appeared on my property in a flash of light that blacked out most of the city, in a crater, looking as if you just stepped out of a war field?" Naruto stared hard at the man, his eyes narrowing. "Shit! What do I tell him? Hey! I'm from another dimension. Me and my best friend were having a major battle, when the energy of a legendary demonic fox and cursed energy opened a rip in the time-space continuum. No, he'd have me locked up somewhere." Giving a sigh, the teen opened his mouth to speak. However, the sounds of arguing from the closed doors distracted the two. The screams grew louder, and then the sounds of struggling before the doors were unceremoniously opened and a young girl walked in. Saya was not happy. Her mother and her had just returned from the mall, seeing as it was put on lockdown from the sudden quake. Her day was ruined, and what's supposed to be a relaxing mother-daughter trip turned into a panicked frenzy. Once they arrived home, she spotted her father's car, and tried finding him all over the estate. However, he was nowhere to be found. She checked his office first, but he was not there. So, after searching around, she found a small door her father ordered her to stay away from opened in the hall. So, putting the pieces together, she was now facing the guards that stood in her way of her father, and the recently awakened guest. "I'm sorry, Takagi-sama, the Don is speaking with someone. He gave us this thing to not allow anyone to enter." The pink-haired girl growled in anger, her golden brown eyes narrowing dangerously. "I don't care. I want to talk to him." The guard's sweat dropped at the angered youth, and looked at each other. It was a well-known fact that the daughter of the Takagi family had inherited a very dangerous aspect from her mother, the ability to inflict fear in any man's heart. Finally losing her patience, the girl shoved past them and kicked the door open, stepping into the office, and making direct eye contact with a pair of stunningly blue eyes. "Wait, blue?" she thought, slightly surprised. Her eyes scanned over the blonde, who currently had no shirt on, her eye lingering on his developing body. For someone so young, he was already building up some serious muscle. She let her cheeks flush at how surprisingly attractive the battered body they found not 2 days ago really was. Shaking her head, she forced her glare on the now waving blonde. He began to sweat when he noticed said girl glaring at him. Remembering full well the power of the enraged female hormone. For a second, a flash of Tsunade and Sakura invaded his vision, a bit of sadness entering his expression, something Soichiro did not miss. "You!" Saya growled. Naruto blinked, the sweat rising. "Me?" he mumbled weakly. "You're the cause of all of this stress." She pointed at him accusingly, as a fire lit in her eyes. "Shit!" Enraged pink-haired female. "I'm so screwed." Saya, however, continued to glare at the blonde. Her mind, however, was racing. How is he up and moving right now? He looked to be at death's door not even 2 days ago. None of this is making sense. Her frustration was growing, along with her anger, and being only 14 years old, she had no control of it whatsoever. Soichiro stood, and let his leader-like personality shine, a serious expression coming over him as he fixated his daughter with a serious stare. "Saya, do not step into my office like that again. This could have been a seriously important meeting, ruined because of you." Her anger began to lower, and her cheeks were tinted red with embarrassment at her father's scolding. Naruto watched her, and sweat dropped. "Holy bipolar," he mused. "Uzumaki-san, I'm sorry. This is my daughter, Takagi Saya, who will be taking her leave after introductions are done with." The Don spoke. Naruto gave the girl a fox-like grin, and scratched the back of his head, unintentionally giving her an eye full of his upper body. "Name's Uzumaki Naruto, nice to meet you, Saya-chan." The girl growled. "Who the hell said you could call me by my first name? And put a shirt on, you pervert!" she cried. Naruto blinked, and looked down at himself, as if just now realizing that he held no shirt. His eyes wandered to his chest, and noticed something of great importance missing. "The Shodeus necklace!" he cried, the precious stone given to him by Tsunade missing from his neck. "My stuff! Where is my stuff?" the teen cried loudly, surprising the occupants of the room. The urgency of his tone was not missed by anyone, and the look in his eyes made most of them nervous. "All of your things are placed inside of one of the knocked-over cabinets in the room you woke up in." Naruto understood that easily. Saya suddenly felt a sharp wind pass by her, and Soichiro's eyes winded as the blonde seemed to vanish from his eyes, and suddenly appear in front of the door. "Fast," thought the pink-haired genius with wide eyes. "That speed is unbelievable. I barely saw him move," the Don thought. The Don moved from behind his desk and followed the blonde, as did Saya, and the two guards followed them because, well, it's their job. Naruto, however, was ignoring everything, as he ducked and evaded random people which he believed to be maids and staff, before making a sharp turn and jumping headlong into the door he earlier came out of. The teen rushed down the steps and into the small underground room before searching wildly for the knocked-over cabinet, the grip on his kunai tighter. His eyes finally saw a small brown square, and rushed to it. Ripping the cabinet open, he looked to see his orange jumpsuit ripped and tattered, blood and dirt staining the fabric. Over it was his shinobi pouch, a few kunai and shurikens still inside, along with a few solider pills. Next to it was his headband, folded neatly. Right in front of that were his shinobi sandals, and in the middle of it all, wrapped in a small white fabric, was the first Hokage's necklace. The blonde placed the tripod kunai down, as well as the tails of the utterly gutsy shinobi that was in his other hand down, and reached inside, ignoring the people who rushed into the room in time to watch him pull out the necklace. The teen gazed at the stone, and gave a small sigh of relief. This was one of his first ever gifts. It was beyond precious to him. It was his a testimony to him becoming Hokage. Although, he would never accomplish that dream now. His satin ocean blue eyes drifted to folded headband, and with one hand, he gripped it tightly. This, more than anything, mattered the most to him. A gift from the first person to truly acknowledge him, and a sing of trust and faith. His shinobi headband, showing that he was a proud ninja of Konoha. Now, he was nothing. From behind him, Soichiro and Saya watched him with a growing sadness. The guards were ordered to stay upstairs by Soichiro once they reached the lower room's doorstep. Saya continued to stare at the exposed back of the blonde, her mind racing. I don't understand. I've read dozens of books on psychology. I should be able to at least read his motives. He shouldn't be walking right now, nothing can be able to stand up after the condition he was in, and he seemed fine in Daddy's office, and now here he is, a different person, immersed in his own world. Her confusion was starting to grow once more, and as she stated before, Saya hated not knowing. Uzumaki Naruto. Who are you? She was brought out of her musings by her father's hand being placed on her should. Light golden brown eyes met a darker pair. Uzumaki-san, we shall be in the main hall. I trust you will be able to find it. I shall have someone bring you something to eat later on in the day. We shall leave you to your own now. The Don hoped the boy could understand that, and stepped out, lightly closing the door and leaving the blonde teen to his own devices. Silently, he walked side by side with his daughter, his eyes drifting to her. He recognized the look in her eye, curiosity, confusion. It was the same look Yuriko gave him when they first met. She must have inherited that curiosity from her mother. He mused. Daddy? His daughter's soft voice spoke. What are you going to do with him? She asked. Soichiro stayed quiet, before giving a small sigh. He will stay with us for a while, until he can get settled in. My honor will not allow me to throw a confused child out into this cold world. Besides, I feel as if he would be more of a threat to the world than the world could ever be to him. That speed, it's not human, he must be some form of trained solider. Right now he is confused, and a confused solider is a dangerous one. He added inwardly. Where did he come from? How is he even alive right now? She asked her father all of these questions as they stepped out of the stairway and into the hall, ignoring the two guards that saluted their leader. I have many questions as well. The answers will come in time, be patient. Now let us go and see your mother. He spoke as he crossed his arms behind his back, and walked calmly to the main hall. Saya huffed, her eyes darting back to the small door, before giving a small sigh. Be patient, he says. How can I be, when such an interesting enigma is going to be living with us from here on out? The girl shook her head quickly. Why am I suddenly so interested in him, she wondered. A flash of ringed eyes invaded her mind. Saya growled at herself, and gave out a frustrated sigh. All of this stressing is doing me no good. I should focus on other things. With a small nod, she went after her father, trying to focus on other matters besides their new blonde guest. Naruto didn't know how long he had sat there, just reminiscing on his friends, and his now old life. He had heard the door open, and someone drop off a plate of what he presumed to be food from the smell of it, but he didn't feel like eating. His mind was too busy thinking how everyone must have been reacting, how they probably thought he and Sasuke killed each other, how Orochimaru must be throwing a hissy fit, or how the Akatsuki must have been freaking out over his disappearance. It all crossed his mind, and knowing that he was causing his precious people pain, and that they believed him to be dead, hurt the most. He thought about Tsunade or the pervy sage and how he must have been using everything in his power, even his toads, to find him. Wait. The blonde thought. The toads. If I could just summon them. There might be a way. He thought excitedly. Standing up, the teen took a deep breath, and steeled himself. Going through the necessary hand sings, he raised his hand, and then slammed it on the ground, summoning just enough chakra to call Gamakichi. What he expected was a loud poof of smoke, and the frog to freak once he saw him. What he did not expect was for his eyes to widen, and blood to start pooling out of his mouth and onto the floor, as his insides began to feel the same pain as when he was inside of Rift. He could feel his chakra ripping itself apart from within him. The blonde fell to his knees, holding onto his stomach as the pain continued to grind into him. From within the seal, the fox's eyes snapped open at the disturbance. What hell is going on? The blonde screamed in his mind. You idiot! A familiar voice roared. A familiar warm feeling coursed through him as the fox's chakra worked to counterbalance his own, the pain slowly starting to fade away. Finally catching his breath, the teen wiped the blood left over on his lip with the back of his hand, his eyes still wide. Kyubi! How? He asked aloud. Speak in your mind, use your thoughts to communicate with me, unless you want people thinking you're insane. How's this? Better. It responded. Naruto inhaled deeply, wincing slightly as his throat and chest began to ache once more, the pain not completely gone. Kyubi! What the hell was that? I can't channel chakra without feeling like my insides are going through a blender. He could hear the fox growl. Are you so stupid that you can't think that putting your body through a dimensional rift won't have some form of effect on you? My chakra can balance it out, but your chakra is not used to rift energy. It invaded your system and caused some form of disturbance. Naruto grunted and slammed his fist on the wall, causing small cracks to appear around it, a testimony to his strength. Are you saying I can't use my chakra? The great fox gave a sigh. For now, no. You'll have to wait till the rift energy filters out of your system. Over time it should, and you should be able to regain some of your power, but the more you push it, the more damage you will do to yourself. How long will that take? He asked. Rift energy is powerful, very powerful, it's pure energy, unlike chakra which is separated. Rift energy is pure and 100 times stronger. Had you been another human, you would have been dead, but your chakra is surprisingly potent and powerful for a human's, and your body is already used to foreign chakra, thanks to me. So you survived it invading your system. What it will do to you, I do not know. It could be slowly killing you, or it could make you stronger. Who knows? The spiky-haired blonde groaned, letting his body fall back and hit the floor as he stared at the ceiling. So you're telling me I'm dealing with something completely unknown, inside of my body, that could end up slowly killing me, and my main source of power is currently out of action? Yes. The blonde sighed, his eyes shutting as the pain finally faded away, leaving him feeling sore from the inside out. Well, that's just fantastic. Why can't I ever get a break? He cried aloud. The best I can tell you is train your physical energy, and find out what your Rinnegan can do. Wait. I thought I couldn't use chakra, how am I going to use the Rinnegan? Plus, I don't know any taijutsu style, how am I going to train myself? The fox gave a small growl, and spoke. Think about it, mortal. Yes, your chakra is out of the question, but you're still alive? The Rinnegan requires that you just channel the chakra into your eyes. It's not a jutsu, it's a bloodline. It's like cutting off your chakra flow. It's not like you're using a jutsu, which you need to regulate the chakra outside of your body as well as inside. With the Rinnegan, you only need to regulate the chakra inside of your body. Besides, it's not like the blonde would be able to use some of the more powerful outer jutsu the Rinnegan allowed just yet, and by the time he could, his body should have filtered out most of the rift energy. Without the outward jutsu, the Rinnegan still provided with some nice basic skills, such as increased vision and more precision. As for taijutsu, I have lived many years, boy, and I have witnessed many different taijutsu styles. I could help you learn one of them. Naruto instantly brightened up at that, a wide grin splitting his face. Really? Yada? Wait, why are you helping me? If I die, you die. I've said it before. Naruto gave a sly grin. Really? Or maybe you're actually starting to like me? He teased. Silence, fool. As if I would ever consider a pathetic human a comrade. I've had enough of you, do not disturb my sleep again, boy. Or else. The fox growled, voice fading away. Naruto gave a slight frown, and made a tch sound. Geez, someone's grumpy when they're woken up. He mumbled to himself. Sighing, the teen turned to food plate, and noticed there was also a small bag, and a fresh pair of clothing there as well with a note. Moving over to pick it up, the blonde began to read it. Once again, it was hard considering how different the language was. Uzumaki-san, there is a shower near this room, go to it whenever you wish, I have had it prepared for your use. Once you are done, there shall be a servant waiting for you, he shall escort you to the main hall, we shall talk from there. Takagi. Naruto turned to the plate of food, and felt his stomach growl. With a happy grin, he dug in, and enjoyed the meal. Once he was done, he picked up the bag, and placed the headband, his kunai pouch, along with the tri-kunai and the book his father left him inside of it, the necklace hanging off of his neck, before picking up the clothes and making his way up the stairs, then entering the hallway, slightly shocked at seeing the same guards. But giving them a small nod, which they returned. Once of them stepped forward and spoke. Uzumaki-san, follow me, I shall escort you to your facility. With a nod, the blonde followed, still amazed by all of the things he saw. Once he reached another door, the guard nodded and motioned for the blonde to enter. The teen gave him a small wave, and a thank you before stepping into the expensive-looking bathroom. There was a tub and a shower, with everything he would need. On the counter there was a blue towel and a toothbrush with toothpaste. There was also a mirror, in which he inspected himself, posing a few times, before finally entering the shower, singing a small song as he washed himself. Soichiro sat patiently with his wife and daughter in the main hall. It was a large room with a large plasma screen television set, and other expensive things. Surrounding it were two railings and a set of large stair steps that lead into different rooms. Around it were various ornaments and pictures, and a large window was placed in the middle of the wall, just after the stairway. So, this boy speaks a different Japanese than us? Yuriko asked her husband with curiosity. Yes, it's thicker, and feels older. He's quite the character, the man commented. Saya, however, just sat in between her mother and father, an annoyed expression on her face. I still don't get why I have to be here, she mumbled. Yuriko gave her daughter a small smile. Now, if I recall, you're the most curious one of us all. You wouldn't stop asking about the Uzumaki-kun for the past 2 days. Shut up, mother, she yelled with a blush. Soichiro just watched the scene with a small amount of amusement, his thoughts on the soon-to-be new resident of their home. I sense no ill will from him, and just giving him up to the media or whoever else may find him seems like a terrible idea. That boy is quite powerful. I can feel it flowing out of him. He is also confused, and leaving him to his own devices would be the worst choice as of right now. The sound of footsteps caught the attention of the Takagi family, and all eyes turned to the stairs as an older man dressed as a simple butler walked with a bow, fully clothed Naruto following behind. The blonde wore a simple white shirt, his necklace tucked inside of it, and a pair of tan cargo shorts. On his feet were a pair of white socks, with sandals. The teen, seeing the family, gave a small grin and a wave, while the butler gave a small bow, and walked away to do butler-like things. At least that's what the blonde believed. Thank you for the food, and clothing, and well, everything, the teen stated with surprising respect as he gave a small bow. Soichiro lifted a hand, and gave a small smile. It was nothing, Uzumaki-san. It would be a blow to honor to leave you with no form of help. By the way, this is my wife, Takagi Yuriko. The woman gave a warm smile, and a small wink to the blonde, making him blush. Holy hell, she's hot, the teen stated inwardly. Nice to meet you, ma'am, he stated with a grin. Turning back to the older man, but not before giving Saya a small grin as well, his blue eyes giving off a slight fox-like appeal. Now then, back to my earlier question. Sit, please. Naruto nodded, and sat down on the small chair placed there for him, facing the family. Can you please tell me why you suddenly appeared out of thin air? Now, Naruto was in the lower room for a good part of the day, so he had time to prepare. I don't remember, he stated. Soichiro's eyes narrowed, while the two females looked at him curiously. What do you mean you don't remember? Questioned Saya rudely. A look from her mother silenced her, however. Naruto grew slightly defensive at her tone, and his eyes hardened as he processed her words. I don't remember. Me and a friend were somewhere in a forest, I think, then there was this bright flash of white light, and the rest I don't remember, he explained. Soichiro's eyes closed, and he looked to be deep in though. He's lying, very well. If he wishes to keep it to himself, I shall respect his wishes, as long as he brings no trouble to my family. Opening his eyes, he gave the blonde a small nod. That is an inconvenience. Hopefully your memory will return with time. Naruto gave him a grateful look, and the Don's theory was proven correct. However, you will stay with us until then. You will take proper Japanese classes, and learn to correct yourself. Once you have done that, you will attend school with Saya. I shall make sure everything is ready for you by then. You are free to wander the estate, and only the estate. Unless you accompany me or my wife outside. Naruto listened intently and nodded. This man, he's smart, really smart. Either way, I owe him for this. Thank you? The teen spoke. Think nothing of it, a room has been prepared for you. You shall be led there by one of our staff. It is getting late, and I'm sure you are quite exhausted. I bid you a good night, Uzumaki-san. You too, Saya, he stated as a man walked next to Naruto, and motioned for him to follow. Saya stared long and hard at her father, before sighing in defeat, and bidding them a good night and leaving, but not before giving the blonde one more look. Naruto then gave the family a nod and bid them all a good night as well, before following the butler. Once they were all gone, Yuriko turned to her husband, her eyes glinting. You don't believe him, do you? She asked. The Don shook his head a no. I sense no ill will from him, and throwing him out there would do more harm than good. So he shall remain with us. Yuriko gave a nod and scooted closer to him, before resting her head on his shoulder. Things have gotten quite interesting, my love. Soichiro smirked. Yes, they have. I sense something strange from him, however, and Saya seems to be very interested in him. She's a curious girl, and he's chock full of interesting things. The Don closed his eyes and wrapped his arm around his wife. Yes, let's see how this will all play out. Naruto stepped into his new room, and whistled in appreciation. It was spacious and large, with a nice view of the forest around the estate. There was a nice bed, and a desk with another one of those square things. There were some books on the table, but he would read those in the morning. Taking his shirt off, and placing his things next to the small desk beside the bed, the blonde pulled out the book his father gave him, and flipped to the first page as he laid down, and began to read. The tale of the utterly gutsy shinobi, Naruto. He read aloud. A smile fell on his face at the name of the main character. He read until his eyes felt heavy, and he drifted off to sleep. End. Chapter 4. The nightmare begins. 2 years later. I was used to the peace. It was a nice change from the constant battle. I was really beginning to enjoy my new life. Hell, I even felt normal. Well, as normal as a shinobi with supernatural powers and a being of pure energy sealed in his gut could, but you get the picture. Alas, life had a way of doing me in. My peace was about to be rudely interrupted by something I would have never imagined. The dead. A familiar mop of spiky blonde hair moved through the crowded hallways of Fujimi High School, smiling and waving at some of the familiar faces as he made his way to his next class, which just happened to be his worst class, mathematics. 2 years had passed since he entered this new world. The next morning when he awoke, Soichiro had him begin his studies. The blonde was taught almost everything he would need to know, still pretending to have amnesia to avoid questioning. He knew the don was curious, but he was glad he respected the blonde's privacy. The Jinchuriki had changed much in the past 2 years. He was taller now than ever before, thanks to his new diet. All thanks to Yuriko, he stood at a solid 5'11". His hair was also wilder and longer than ever, 2 long bangs falling over his sideburns, resembling his father's. The blonde's face lost much of its baby fat, giving it a more angled appearance, and his blue eyes grew darker. After attending online schooling to catch himself up for a year, he finally entered Fujimi High as a first-year student. Needless to say, it was an interesting experience. After the first week or so, the blonde decided he did not agree with the uniform, and made his own customization. Instead of a black blazer, he had Yuriko stitch him a long black coat, with an orange spiral on the back, along with a long black headband with an orange Konoha symbol stitched on the front. Underneath, he wore a white V-neck, with the first necklace hanging proudly. He was thoroughly satisfied, and thanked Yuriko by helping her around the house for the next month or so. The school, however, was not amused, and they decided to detain the blonde. That was the day the prank king from hell arose. The next morning the school was painted completely pink. The teen got suspended for 3 days, but they never brought the subject up again. The rest of his first year in high school went along smoothly, and Naruto met some very interesting characters, Takashi being one of them. The older teen reminded him of a more emotional form of Sasuke. Granted, the Uchiha was constantly set on brood, but I digress. Now in their second year, it should have been third for Takashi, but he got held back. Things were going pretty smoothly. He was even regaining some more of his chakra, enough to form a fully functional Rasengan if he pushed hard enough, which meant that his chakra level was at high Chunin level at best, but it still hurt like hell to use it. His taijutsu had improved as well, the Kyuubi teaching him the lost Uzumaki art, Tenkai, or Heaven's Release. It was a very powerful style that used the Uzumaki healing along with their endurance and stamina to preform a series of powerful attacks. It had 3 major moves, and the blonde had already knocked down 1 in a year. Speaking of the fox, it had surprisingly been more tame lately, which made him think that he was finally getting through to the tailed beast, which brought a true smile to his face. The smile was gone in an instant, and the teen sighed quietly as the last bell rang, meaning he was late to class again. Naruto slowed down, watching some of the students rush past him, some giving him a sheepish grin as they passed, which he returned. Once the hallway was clear, the teen ran towards to the nearby ledge and jumped over it. Now, for most, the laws of gravity would come into effect, and they would fall 3 floors to their doom, but then again, most people were not Uzumaki Naruto. In a surprising show of strength, the teen raised his hands and grabbed the railing above him and pushed himself up, doing a small flip, before landing on the wall, crouched like an animal, on the wall sideways. Not missing a beat, the teen ran along the wall, and giving another mighty leap, cleared the large fence that surrounded the roof of the school, before landing quietly on the ground, so as to not disturb his guest. Who was his guest? Well, it was none other than Komuro Takashi. Takashi was a rather average-looking teenager. He had blackish-brown hair, and brown eyes, with a slightly pale complexion. He had a build, but it showed he didn't partake in much physical activity. Currently, the teenager was sulking his heart out as he stared at nothing in particular. You know, the more you mope about it, the less anything will be accomplished. The blonde's deep voice rang. The dark-haired teen jumped in surprise, and turned around, leveling his fellow classmate with an annoyed glare. Naruto! How many times have I told you not to do that? He exclaimed. Naruto in response gave a wide grin, and held up his hand and making the peace signal with his fingers. Takashi-kun, relax. You're too stressed, loosen up bro. The teen sighed, and shoved his hands in his school uniform pockets, closing his eyes and leaning on the fence behind him. I swear, how you manage to do that all the time without me even noticing you amazes me. In the blink of an eye the blonde was beside him, hands behind his head as he leaned back on the fence as well, a knowing smirk on his face. I already told you, trademark ninja secret. The darker-haired teen scoffed. When will you ever stop with the ninja crap? You've been spewing it since you got to this school. The temperature suddenly dropped in the area, and Takashi had to suppress a shudder as cold and calculating blue eyes peered into his own. It's no joke, Takashi-kun, I am a ninja. The two stared at each other, before blue eyes narrowed into mere slits, and the older teen found himself gaping as the blonde suddenly had his ramen in his hands, and was munching down on it with extreme glee. How? I hit it so well today. The blonde stopped eating, and responded with a deadpan stare. Slurping up the last of the noodles, he gave a content burp, and fell on his behind, giving a satisfied sigh. Ma, I'm not just any kind of ninja, I'm a ramen ninja. You've hid the precious everywhere, even the girls' bathroom, but I always find it. Your mom makes the best ramen, thank her for me, the blonde stated with a wide grin. Takashi chose not to respond, instead he just followed suit, and fell down on his behind as well next to the blonde. You're insane, he mumbled. Oh well, you can choose your enemies, but you can't choose your friends. Or was it the other way around? Takashi gave a mental shrug and decided to leave it at that. His brown eyes shifted to the still grinning Uzumaki, his blue eyes reflecting the sky itself as he gazed at the slow-moving clouds. He remembered the whiskered teen once mentioning that a good friend of his used to do it a lot, and he found it relaxing. The blonde was a strange one indeed. There was something off about him, anyone who had met him could tell you that. He seemed to smile at you, but behind that smile was something more, something no one could understand. The blonde held a power, that just being around him, you felt at ease, as if with him by your side, nothing could hurt you. He had a way of making you open up to him, and make you want to trust him. I suppose it's why Takashi considered him more of a close friend than almost anyone. Even when the fallout between him and Rei happened, the teen was there. A frown fell on the dark-haired teen's face once more as thoughts of the very reason he was so broody invaded his mindscape. Blue eyes noticed this, and the blonde leaned forward, removing his hands from the back of his head, and gave a sigh. You really need to let it go. I'm not saying a promise is something to break, because going back on your word has always been taboo in my book, but right now, brooding isn't getting you anywhere. The other teen remained silent. Naruto shrugged and stood, his coat fluttering in the breeze behind him. I'll leave you to your own then. Just wanted to check up on you. If you need me, I'll be in the usual spot. He then proceeded to place his hands in his pockets and walk off, leaving a sighing teen behind to his own thoughts. As soon as the blonde reached for the door to the roof, it opened, revealing the familiar face of Morita, a teen with short hair and a strange spiky mohawk in the front. Naruto gave the boy a grin and stuck out his fist for a fist bump. Morita grinned in return and linked the blonde's knuckles with his own. Morita! Good to see you. I was just leaving Mr. Brood over there to his thoughts. He gestured to the now annoyed teen. Would you stop calling me that? Takashi cried. The other teen chuckled, and gave the taller blonde a thumbs up. Perfect timing, I guess. I was just about to take him with me to the stairs. I heard some teachers saying they were going to check this place out for any delinquents like us. Naruto blinked, and gave a small nod. Guess they're catching on to us. Well, I'll see you guys in physical ed. Giving the shorter teen a small two-finger salute, he walked off down the stairway, heading to the usual spot, which consisted of a special closed-off area of the old side of the school, a place no one really went to for fear of getting in trouble. Naruto, however, decided that trouble came to him, so he could do whatever he wanted. As the door shut behind him, Morita turned to the now standing Takashi and offered a wave. Yo, looks like us three are doing the same thing today, huh? He spoke. Takashi gave a small smile at his old friend and nodded. Yeah, I didn't get much sleep last night, and being cooped up in a classroom is not my idea of fun right now. The other teen nodded sagely. I agree, we better get out of here quick though. The teachers could be here any minute, and I don't feel like dealing with them right now. With a nod, the two followed Naruto's example and headed down the stairs, before finding themselves in the familiar halls of Fujimi High. Takashi stopped and yawned as he stared through the large open window beside him, opposite of the rows of lockers. So, is the reason you've been all depressed lately because of the rumors? Takashi gave his friend a look, silently asking him to elaborate. Well, there's a rumor going around that you got rejected by the same girl who was dating Igu, the same girl who got held back last year along with you. Hasashi said her name was Rei something. He didn't seem to notice Takashi's eyes harden, or his knuckles turn white as he squeezed tightly, digging his nails into his skin. Miyamoto. He stated suddenly. Huh. Morita stated. Rei Miyamoto. That's her name, the girl who's dating Hasashi. Morita's eyes winded. Oh shit man, that's your... He didn't get a chance to finish as Takashi walked by him, a sudden calmness about him that seemed to put the other teen on edge. If the teachers are checking the roofs, I'll just head over to the astronomy club side. No one seems to check there. Wait. Aren't you mad? I mean, you told me about the promise. Takashi gave his friend a small smile, although anyone could see it was fake. Nah, Igu is a good guy. He's good-looking, smart, and good at sports. It all comes naturally to him. Morita seemed taken back at this. If you say so, I'm going to hide out in the dorms. Naruto said we should all meet up in front of the school once classes are over, and head to the arcade. You down? Takashi gave a sigh. Would Naruto let me be anything but? The shorter teen gave a laugh. No, he wouldn't. Guess I'll be seeing you after school, later, Komuro. With a wave, the teen ran off, leaving Takashi alone as he made his way to the astronomy club's roof. Naruto growled as he made his way to the older complex of the school, near the track and sheds. Why the hell does this school have so many stairs? He mumbled to himself. The blonde pulled his right hand out of his pocket and scratched the back of his head. I can't even use any of my skills without risking being caught. Then they would question me, and send me to a lab, and do experiments on my body. Just like in the movies. He thought hysterically. From within the confines of his mind, a deep and familiar voice growled. Shut the hell up, brat. You've been watching too many stupid conspiracy movies. The teen stopped mid-step and blinked. Oh, QB. I thought you were napping? The fox growled once more. I was, and I will be again soon. I just thought I should warn you, I feel a disturbance. Naruto scoffed, and shot the fox a blank look, even though it couldn't really see it. Oh yeah, I'm watching too many movies. A disturbance, come on, QB. I thought you said you hated Star Wars? From within the cage, the QB roared. You fool! I never said that. I said The Empire Strikes Back was pointless. Never insult the Star Wars series. Or I'll send you mental pictures of Guy and Lee hugging again. The whiskered teen winced, and hugged himself unconsciously, the images fresh in his memory. Okay. I'm sorry. Sheesh. Now, what disturbance are you talking about? TCH, I don't care. I did more than enough by warning you. Whatever it is, it's your problem, brat. I'm going back to sleep. The deep voice faded away, and Naruto felt the mental link break as the mighty-tailed beast fell into a slumber once more. Stupid lazy fox. He muttered to himself still, QB is a force of nature. So if he feels something is off, it must mean something big is about to happen. Naruto felt himself grin as the familiar feeling of excitement rushed through his body. Finally, something to up the action around here, and if it was big enough that the QB could feel it, then the blonde could already tell it was nothing normal. Yada! Things are about to get fun. With a newfound energy in him, the blonde rushed at civilian-like speeds towards the small and old cottage-like building near the edge of the school, close to the river. Some of the kids outside saw only an orange and black blur rush past them, a similar thought running through their minds. Uzumaki. Takashi sighed as he leaned over the railing, his eyes scanning over the whole front of the school, as he let his thoughts wander. From the corner of his eyes he saw pink petals falling to the ground in a lazy fashion. Cherry blossoms? No wonder the club picked this place. It's soothing, he whispered. With a sigh, the teen extended one hand, his pinky out as his thoughts swarmed once more, memories of the promise Ray made to him making him grit his teeth in anger and frustration. Pinky promise. If you break it, I'll make you swallow 1,000 needles, he repeated darkly. A sudden chill ran down his spine as familiar figures walked into his line of vision, heading towards the main gate of the school. Takashi removed his hand, and narrowed his eyes to get a better look. It seemed there was some stranger at the gates, and he kept running into it, like he didn't even know it was there. Huh, who is that? Some creep? He whispered. What would happen next would change his life forever. Naruto slowed down as he approached the old building. He gave a small grin and took a step forward when a sudden chill ran down his spine. The teen sniffed a couple of times, before his eyes narrowed. That smell. It was a smell he would never forget. Blood, he whispered. His sharp blue eyes searched for the source, hoping that it was just a dead animal, or a bird. No, the smell. It's too fresh. Suddenly flicking his wrist, a sharp kunai came to his hand from one of his hidden pockets. Flipping it around so it was in a reverse fashion, the teen brought it up to his chest, and tensed his muscles as he stepped quietly, his shinobi training kicking in. He was always good at stealth, being able to outrun many high-level ninja back home. He got even better once he entered this new world, having to sneak out of the estate for training and such things, as well as keeping his power a secret. His sharp eyes caught a hole on the nearby fence, meaning someone must have strong-armed their way in. There were small blood stains on the fence, and a trail leading into the old building before him. Cautiously approaching the building, the blonde climbed up the short steps and took a look at his surroundings for any shadows lurking around. Giving himself a mental nod, the teen slowly reached for the doorknob. Arg! A loud screech came from above, and in an instant a body dropped before the blonde. The teen's eyes widened and he jumped back, landing in a crouched position, kunai poised to strike and kill if body remained motionless as blood pooled around it. Naruto snarled as the smell of death assaulted his nose. He was never a fan of the smell. His eyes widened as the dead body twitched and gave a groan. What the, he thought. Letting himself stand upright, he took a cautious step forward and spoke. Hey, are you alright? The blonde questioned. There was another groan, and the body let out another twitch. His grip on the kunai grew tighter, as the body raised itself from the ground. Blue eyes widened as he saw a large piece of his stomach was gone, leaving nothing but gore behind. What the hell? He whispered. The boy seemed to react to the sound of his voice, as it hurled itself towards the surprised blonde, giving out an inhuman groan. Naruto quickly stepped back, and leaned to the right, evading the dead creature, and watching it stumble before falling to the ground. Is it blind or something? He thought. His question was answered as the creature stood slowly and turned to him, both of its eyes turning in random directions, gray and pale, much like its skin was. There was blood leaking from its mouth, and flesh lodged in between its open maw. Never before had the blonde seen such a sight, and it made him take an involuntary step back. That proved to be a mistake, however. From the windows, multiple hands erupted, the sounds of glass shattering, and the same monotone groans swallowing the silence. From them, more bodies erupted, all looking to be in the same condition as the first. Although their injuries were random, they all looked to have been bitten by something. What the fuck? The teen questioned aloud. Another mistake. At the sound of his voice, the creatures rushed to him, their mouth open, eager to get a piece of him, literally it seemed. Naruto, however, was no one's meal. Pumping chakra into his feet, the blonde gave a mighty leap, and landed sideways on the wall of the old building, sticking to it much like the comic hero named Spider-Man that he read about did. He watched the dead bodies pile onto each other, some tearing into each other, spilling blood and gore all over. Holy crap! This is familiar, he stated loudly. The creatures heard the sound of his voice and rushed over to the wall, only to slam against it and fall to the ground once more. I've seen this on the Late Show. You ghoulish fiends will hold me down and take turns nibbling on my insides, then you'll eat my brain and leave my body for the buzzards. The creatures continued to slam into the wall. Well, let me tell you, there's no freaking way that's happening. Gripping his kunai tightly, he let himself fall on top of one of the creatures, his weight crushing its skull, and blood pooling around him. Ducking, he avoided a sweep from another one of the creatures, and then gave the attacker a crushing kick to the ribs, feeling some of them crack under his above-normal strength. The creature ricocheted back, and crashed into another incoming one, sending them both to the ground. Ho ho! He cried as he back-flipped over one coming in from behind him, and giving it a frontal kick, sending it tumbling into the ground. Dodging another one, he stabbed the kunai into its back while simultaneously giving it a powerful knee. Is that all you've got? You're falling apart, marrow brain, he taunted. Quickly shoving off the creature, he rushed towards another before stopping suddenly, his face a few inches from the disgusting human thing. Who? You need a mint, brother, he stated before swiping the kunai at its neck, the creature's head tilting back as blood pooled from the wound. Not missing a beat, he ducked and leaned into open arms, his kunai stabbing into the heart of the attacker behind him. How's your sister? He asked with a smirk. Giving it a rough shove, the monster fell to the ground, leaving the blonde as the only thing standing. Looking over his handiwork, he couldn't help but whistle. Well, they're obviously not alive, he mused. A strong grip on his leg made him wince, as his eyes darted to the hand of the creature he just stabbed in the heart, squeezing it tightly. Shit! Strong! He cried inwardly. Quickly slashing the creature's arm off, he leaped back, only to gape at the scene before him. Most of the creatures were once again standing, even the one that had half of its head lopped off by his kunai. The only one that wasn't standing was the one whose head he crushed. The head. That's the only way to kill it, he whispered. The creatures groaned and made their way over to him. I don't have time for this shit. Naruto flipped the creatures off, before turning around and pumping chakra into his legs, wincing as the leg the monster grabbed pulsed with pain. It would heal later, so he didn't stress it. In a flash he was gone, rushing towards the school. Enough of this. Stop this insane behavior. A busty female teacher with long brown hair, a single bang falling over her face, and a pair of glasses stated as she and two others faced a strange man who continued to walk into the school gate without stopping. Stop it! If you don't, we'll call the police. And she was cut off by a taller man with black hair and a bit of facial hair on his face. Hold your horses, Hayashi-sensei, The man spoke as he placed an arm before her. He raised his sleeve and gave her a grin. We don't have to call anyone just yet, all we have to do is show him who's boss. With that being said, he reached through the gate and gripped the dazed-looking man's shirt, before pulling him in roughly. Now look here, you son of a bitch! The woman identified as Hayashi gasped at the display, worry imprinted all over her expression. Wait, Teshima-sensei, don't be so forceful! She cried. Teshima turned to her and opened his mouth to speak, when he felt a powerful grip on his hand, strong enough that the two could hear cracking. The man gripped his arm and screamed loudly, the pain making him howl. Teshima-sensei! Hayashi cried. No! Stay back! This guy's strength, his screams increased in that second as the other man bit into his arm, then ripped out a large part of it. From above, Takashi watched this all with horrid shock. What the hell? He whispered as he took a step back. Teshima fell to the ground screaming. My arm! He ate my arm! He screamed. Hayashi fell on her behind in shock, as she watched her college and secret lover squirm around in pain. From around them, a nearby student and a teacher rushed to help. The teacher falling next to the man and placing his hand over the wound, while the student and Hayashi continued to watch in shock. Shit. I can't stop the bleeding. Suddenly, the body went limp, and all eyes widened even more. He's dead, the new teacher whispered. Right after he said that, Teshima's hand twitched, and his head tilted up, although something was gravely wrong. Hayashi rushed to his side, and placed his head in her lap as tears fell from her eyes. Teshima! You're alive! She cried. The student and teacher gave a small sigh of relief. Teshima suddenly gripped the busted woman's shirt, and pulled some of it down, revealing a large amount of cleavage. Just as he was about to rip a chunk of her neck out, a kunai flew into its head, knocking it back into the ground, blood spilling all over the now wide-eyed Hayashi. What? Get away from him! A familiar voice cried. Before anyone knew it, a black and orange streak rushed past them, before stopping in front of the gate, another kunai stabbing into the attacker's head, before being ripped out, letting the body fall, truly dead. The older teacher and the unfamiliar student backed up in fear, before running off, screaming their heads off, towards the safety of the school. Hayashi, however, continued to stare at the head of her lover, the kunai still lodged in it. Her stare turned cold as she glared at the blonde before her. You, she whispered. Naruto shook the blood off of his weapon, before turning to the woman. Yes, me, the guy who just saved your ass. Hayashi-sensei. Get up, we need to get in. She suddenly sprang up and began to pound on the taller blonde's chest. You killed him! He was alive, and you killed him! Naruto's eyes narrowed, and he suddenly dropped his kunai and grabbed the woman before staring dead into her eyes, slightly shocking the tear-ridden teacher. Yes, I killed him. No, he was not alive, he was dead but alive. He paused. Look. It's hard to explain, but something seriously screwed up is going on, and if I hadn't killed him again, he would have killed you, and you would have been like that dude at the gates, along with him. She began to cry harder, and the teen let out a frustrated growl. Fine. We do this my way. He picked up his kunai, and walked over to the one that was lodged in the now dead man's head. Then, he tore it out, before wiping the blood on his light blue shirt. He then flicked his wrists, and both kunai disappeared into their hidden spot. Naruto then picked up the woman bridal style, and dashed towards the gate, the familiar sounds of groans slowly invading his hearing, as more of the dead began to walk and stumble into the large courtyard. Naruto! A familiar voice cried, making the blonde look up to see Takashi leaning over the school roof railing, his eyes wide and disbelief written all over his facial expression. Takashi! Get inside! Something weird is going on. Stay away from creatures like the ones you just saw, and try to be as quiet as possible. If you need to fight, aim for the head, he yelled, before rushing into the school. His direction, the nurse's office. Takashi swallowed before shaking his head. What the fuck is going on here? He thought as he rushed inside as well. His direction, Ray. In the span of a few minutes, he found himself catching his breath as he stood in front of a surprised class. Komuro-san. Not only do you find the need to skip my class, but now you interrupt it. He was effectively ignored as Takashi made his way to a girl with long brown blondish hair, put up in a long ponytail with brown eyes, wearing the school's standard girl uniform, her body more developed than most girls her age. This was Rei Miyamoto, and right now, she was staring at the tense teen as he made his way towards her. Come on, we need to go, he whispered. Huh? She blinked. Takashi gritted his teeth, and suddenly grabbed her arm before pulling her up. What are you doing? I'm in the middle of class and… It doesn't matter. We need to go, he interrupted. Pink hair suddenly jumped around as Naruto's housemate stood and glared at the duo, or more at Takashi. Komuro, What are you doing? Saya asked. Next to her, Hisashi stood and grabbed Takashi's shoulder, forcing him to stare into his old best friend's eyes. Takashi growled before giving a sigh. There was an incident at the gate. Someone murdered Teshima-sensei, and Hayashi-sensei would be dead too if Naruto didn't save her. Hisashi gasped. That's terrible. Are you serious? Why would I lie about any of this? He stated. Rei, having enough of being ignored, tore herself away from Takashi's grip. Hey! Don't you keep your explanation a secret from me, Tak. Slap! The action left the whole class stunned. Listen to me, damn it. We need to go. Now! He growled out. Hisashi steeled himself, while Rei continued to gape at the hysterical teen. Grabbing Rei, and missing Takashi's jealous stare, Hisashi smiled apologetically to the teacher before motioning for the girl to follow him, Takashi giving him a nod and moving with the two. Sorry, sensei, we need to go. Igu! Now you too! Were the last things they heard as the door to the class shut behind the three teens. Sayan narrowed her eyes and looked around the room. From her hand, she pulled out her phone, under the desk, and turned it on to check the news. She felt slightly surprised when there was a text on the screen from her blonde-haired housemate. Saya! Get out of class, find somewhere safe to go. With Takashi or find me if you can. Something weird is happening, avoid anyone who is acting strangely, try to be quiet, and if you have to fight, aim for the head. I hope you're safe. See you soon. The pinkett blushed lightly and flipped her phone closed. Takashi is long gone, but if Naruto is worried, something is up. She felt a little angry that her childhood friend had just left her, but she had more important things to worry about. Suddenly standing up, she ran out the door and into the empty halls. Takashi continued to run in front of the two, Rei behind him, still asking questions. What the hell is going on? Takashi grunted and stopped, the two following suit. Something happened at the front gate. He responded. Something happened at the front gate, that's it. She cried in disbelief. Takashi sighed. There was some strange guy, these teachers went up to check it out, when all of a sudden the stranger bit the male teacher. The teacher then tried biting Hayashi-sensei, but Naruto stopped him and saved her. Rei gave him an angry glare. You expect me to believe that? She cried. In an uncharacteristic way, Takashi leveled the girl with a dark glare. You don't want to believe me, fine, go get yourself killed, he uttered. Rei was taken back, but before she could say anything, Hisashi interrupted. Hold up. Follow me. Takashi and Rei glared at each other once more, before the girl locked arms with the teen and nodded, either of them noticing Takashi's anger grow. The trio made their way into the locker rooms, as Hisashi opened up one of the storage closets, before pulling out a broom. He then stepped on the end, making it snap in half, and handed the makeshift spear to Rei. Takashi, on the other hand, gripped a bat in his hands, and turned to Hisashi, giving him a nod as a thank you. If Takashi's story is true, we'll need these. What about you? Komuro asked. I'm a black belt, so I'll be fine with my fists. He explained with a smile. Right now, we should get out of the school, I'm worried about my family. We should meet up with Naruto too. Hold on. Before we do anything, we should call the police. My dad's a detective, so he'll come for us right away. Takashi reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, before handing it to the girl. Give it a shot. With a nod, Rei took the phone and dialed the necessary numbers. It rang a couple of times before someone picked up, and a robotic voice spoke. This is a recording. We at the 110 are held up at the moment. If after calling again, we still do not receive your call, please wait, then try again. Rei felt her heart stop. What could be happening that has 110 all jammed up? Whispered Takashi. As if on cue, there was a static sound before the voice of the school principal spoke. Attention all students and teachers. I repeat. Attention all students and teachers. At the present time, there is a violent struggle occurring on the premises. Takashi tensed, as did Rei and Hisashi. Saya tilted her glasses up as she turned a corner, and narrowed her eyes. Naruto stopped just before the nurse's office, and felt his heart start racing, from excitement or from a feeling of foreboding he could not tell, but he knew things were about to change, so when he opened the door to nurse's office to find a shocked large-breasted woman with curves in all the right places, long blonde hair and a dazed look in her brown eyes, he quickly laid the still in shock woman he rescued on the bed and shut the door, before turning to the nurse. Ano, Uzumaki-san? She asked. The principal continued to speak. Students, stay with your teachers and follow their instructions. There was a sudden loud bang, and the sounds of groaning could be heard, making the blonde's eyes widen. What the no? Stay away from me. No. Stop. Estio Agrega. The pain screams sounded throughout the whole school, and there was silence then, there was nothing but chaos. Students rushed out of their rooms screaming their heads off, as did teachers, shoving and kicking, treating each other as nothing but trash. Men pushed women, stepping over them, teachers kicked over their students, it was pure hysteria. Shit! The whiskered teen mumbled. Naruto turned to Shizuka and spoke in urgency, as he looked out the window to the chaos below. Marikawa-san, this woman is suffering from shock. Everyone is acting crazy, and I can't keep her safe. Please watch over her, keep the door locked, and stay in here, do not make a sound. If you find yourself having to fight, aim for the head. I have to go. Before she could even say anything, Naruto flicked both of his hands, and the two kunai from before appeared from his sleeves, before rushing out into the swarm of students and teachers. From across the school, Saya hid behind a corner, watching the chaos with widened eyes. Never had she expected something like this. Her eyes caught a crouched figure nearby, and moving quietly, she found herself standing over one Hirano Koda, a chubby teen with spiky black hair, and two long bangs over his face, that stopped just over his equally dark eyes. Hirano, she whispered. Koda turned to the pinkett and gave a fearful smile. Tadakagi-san. Let's get out of here, she stated, receiving a nod from the chubby teen. With the trio, Takashi, Hisashi and Rei were running the opposite way of everyone else, much to the confusion of the only girl. Weren't we just about to leave? She asked. The classroom building is full of people, we're going to escape through the administration building. Takashi responded as they turned the corner, only to stop when they heard the sound of groaning and footsteps. From the other corner, a shadowed figure approached slowly. Wait! Isn't that Wakisaka from Current Events? Is he going to stop us? Any further questions were cut off as Wakisaka approached, although his skin was as gray as his eyes, blood falling from them, his jaw widening to impossible lengths, a large chunk of his leg gone. At the sound of Ri's voice, Wakisaka rushed towards her, surprising the three at his quickness. Rei took a step back, and tripped on herself, before falling on her behind, staring at the now falling Wakisaka. Her eyes quickly narrowed, and she gripped her makeshift staff tightly as she mumbled to herself. Don't ever underestimate the Sojutsu Club is capable of, she cried. She suddenly sprang forward and with expert skill, pierced her fellow student in the heart with the spear. To her surprise, the teen kept advancing, shocking all who were present. What? I pierced his heart, she whispered in shock. From behind Wakisaka, Hisashi gripped him in a vice hold, and pulled him away from the spear, a sickening squelch following. Hisashi! Let him go, he's not normal, Takashi stated. The other teen gave a grin in response. Don't worry. If I can pull him off the... He was cut off mid-sentence as he found himself struggling even more, Wakisaka breaking the hold easily. What? How is he so strong? The shocked Hisashi uttered. In the blink of an eye, Wakisaka bit down on the shocked Hisashi, and tore off a good amount of flesh. In that second, a familiar voice spoke from within Takashi's mind. If you need to fight, aim for the head. His blonde friend's words rang true in his head, and with a cry, he slammed the bat over Wakisaka's head, cracking the skull, and watched in satisfaction as he fell to the ground, dead. Takashi panted, and continued to stare at the unmoving body, while Rei rushed to Hisashi's side. He was dead, he was already dead, and he came back to life. Takashi whispered, although Rei and Hisashi could hear him. Hisashi, are you alright? Questioned the brown-haired girl. Why yeah. It's just a flesh wound, he didn't get any of the vitals. He responded with a reassuring smile. We need to go, Takashi hollered. From behind them, more of the walking dead were moving towards them. With a nod, Hisashi stood with the help of Rei. The trio headed to the stairs, and looked down below, cringing at the sounds of screams and agony. We can't go down there, Rei whispered. Takashi turned his eyes to the set of stairs leading up and gave himself a mental nod. Let's go to the roof. We could get a better look at things. The two nodded, and without a second glance back they headed to the roof. Naruto sighed as he ducked under another of the undead, before giving it a deadly blow to the head, ending its existence. Why does weird shit always happen to me? He thought. Moving silently through the now empty hall stained with blood and random moving corpses. None of them bothering the blonde because of his silence. I mean, seriously. If Sasuke is alive, I bet he's not dealing with this. Grumbling to himself, he turned a corner and evaded another one of the infected, as he liked to call them. The blonde had long figured out that if you were bit by one of these things, you became one of them. Ha, and they said I was dumb, he cried out, making a pose. However, his loud proclamation attracted the attention of the nearby infected, making the blonde pale. Fuck me, he stated. Empty halls equals echo. Echo equals bad. The sounds of groaning and screeching as well as footsteps alerted the blonde to the horde of infected heading straight for him. I really don't have time for this, he roared. Naruto looked at a nearby window and rushed for it, before kicking into it, glass shattering all around him. Some of the infected followed the noise and fell from a 3-story height to their end. Naruto, however, soared through the air, his black coat fluttering behind him. The teen raised his hands and formed a cross with his fingers before calling out his signature move. Shadow Clone. He winced as a pain filled his insides, but from underneath him, there was a puff of smoke, before an exact solid replica of the blonde curled into a ball appeared. The loud puff alerted many of the infected underneath him, although they could do nothing about it. Landing on his clone's back, he pushed off and crashed through another window, before rolling into another hallway. He then sprung up and turned to his fallen clone. Thanks for the lift. He grinned. The clone grinned as well before disappearing in another puff of smoke. Naruto scanned his surrounding for any of the infected, and when none were in sight, he rushed. Just as he was about to turn the corner, he fell to the ground, blood spilling out of his mouth as he held his gut. Shit! He cried. The shadow clone took more chakra than most jutsu. A jonin could only make about 10, and even then, he would be down on his last bit of chakra. For him to try that was stupid, especially with his handicap. From his blurred vision, he saw the stairway leading up to the astronomy club's roof. Takashi, maybe he went back. Forcing himself up, the blonde took a deep breath. He knew he was on the east wing of the building, and that Takashi had entered through the west wing. So there was a chance that this door was locked, but the blonde had no other choice. The lower levels were in chaos, and it would put his powers out in the open. Taking another deep breath, the teen headed for the roof. Takashi gaped at the pure chaos around him, as did Hisashi and Rei. From all around the city, there were fires and smoke rising high into the sky. You could hear the screams from all over. It looked as if the world was ending. What the hell do we do now? The teen mumbled. What do you mean, what do we do now? Look around, think about it. This seems like the end, everything we have taken for granted. The sound of copter blades interrupted her, and from above, multiple choppers flew. Inside were men with guns, each decked out in the special forces gear. Rei! Hisashi cried as he hugged the girl close. Takashi lowered his hand, and tightened his fist in anger and jealousy. He was about to do the same thing. From the other side of the roof, the small door was kicked off of its hinges and busted open. The trio tensed, but a familiar voice caused Takashi to relax. From the door, spiky blonde hair danced around as Naruto chased after the choppers. Assholes! Over here! Seeing as they weren't going to turn around, the teen gave them the middle finger, and turned to the now sweat-dropping group, muttering curses to himself. Taka-chan! It's good to see you're alive! The teen grinned. Takashi sighed, and face-palmed. Naruto, please stop with the nicknames. I think it's rather cute, added Hisashi with a chuckle, don't you, Rei? The girl seemed to be staring into nothing, but quickly shook out of it, and gave Hisashi a small smile. Yes, very cute. I used to call Takashi that when we were younger, she thought inwardly. Naruto just continued to grin, but his eyes wandered over the only girl of the group. So, this is Rei, huh? I've seen her around, but never this close up. Cute, he mused. His eyes drifted to the other male, Hisashi, or more, the wound on his arms. He's been bitten. He moved to Takashi. Do they know what happens if you get bitten? You kids sure look like you've been through a lot, the whiskered teen commented. You look like you've been through a bloodbath, responded Takashi. In a way, he was right. The blonde's clothing were soaked with blood, the red standing out against the black and orange. Even his hair was stained with the liquid, as were his hands. Nah, no trouble at all. In the hallway leading up to the nurse's office, a purple-haired sword wielder blinked at the scene before her. There were literal bodies stacked over the door to the nurse's office, blocking anyone from getting through. Of course one could remove it, but in the chaos, time was precious, and no one wanted to waste time. Yup, no trouble at all, he finished. Somehow, they doubted that. Takashi was glad to his friend was alright, but they had more pressing matters to attend to. The bat-wielding teen moved to close the door they had just came in from, only to growl when it would only close halfway. The door is broken, there's no way to separate ourselves from them. Them? Questioned Hisashi. Yeah, I mean, this may all seem like a video game or movie, but we can't exactly call them zombies now, can we? Hisashi gave him a nod. Naruto shrugged, thinking his name was better, and Rei was just worried about their safety. We should head up to the observatory. From there, we can block the stairs. As they all agreed to the plan, the group made their way up the stairs, only for Takashi to be stopped by Naruto. When the teen turned to ask the blonde what was wrong, he was silenced by a pair of icy blue eyes. Rei and Hisashi turned to the two, but before they could ask what was wrong, they were silenced by Naruto. Go on, I have to tell Takashi something important. Rei did not like this. Now hold on, we shouldn't be keeping SECR. Hisashi, however, tugged on her arm, and motioned for her to leave the two alone, but not before giving the blonde one last look. His eyes, who is this guy? He thought. Once the two were out of range, Takashi turned back to his blonde friend, to find him leaning on the wall, his eyes staring at the city. Do you know how the infected become infected? He asked. No, but. A single bite, and you're done. That single sentence sent the world crashing down on the dark-haired teen. What? Naruto closed his eyes, and twirled the kunai in his hand. If you get bit, you become one of them. That's how it's been spreading so fast. The virus, it spreads through fluids, but they must enter the body directly, such as saliva. When it comes in contact with your skin, there's no problem, but when it gets inside of you, that's where it starts. As so. Hisashi has been bitten, and you have a choice to make. He finished. From the door, familiar groans could be heard, signaling their approach. As much as I would love to stay with you guys, you don't need me here. I just wanted to make sure you were safe. Now I need to go find Saya. Stay safe, Takashi. You have to do what you have to do. His life is over, and you must end it. Hisashi! Rei cried from atop the observatory. Takashi wiped his head around to the sound of the cry, distress clearly written on his expression, before turning back to his blonde friend, only to find him gone, a trail of blood and dead bodies with stab wounds in their heads leading to the broken door. Giving the door one last look, Takashi rushed up the stairs to find Hisashi holding his own blood in his hands, and a weeping Rei sitting down next to him. Just like in the movies, a single bite is fatal. He spoke calmly. No. This isn't a movie. It was just one bite. You're going to be fine. Rei cried next to him. Hisashi chuckled softly, and then stood. Takashi, let's set up the barricade. Giving a slow nod, the two set to work, and in a couple of minutes they were safe. Or as safe as anyone could be for the time being. Hisashi coughed up blood once more, and pointed shakily to the edge of the rooftop. Takashi, see, could you do me a favor? He asked. What is it? The dark-haired teen questioned. Over there, if you push me off of here, the fall would crack my skull. Takashi's eyes widened, as did Reese, only tears began to fall from hers even more. No! This can't be happening, she cried. Hisashi began to shake and quiver before tilting his head back, blood shooting out of his mouth, while Rei hugged him tighter. I don't want to become one of them, he whispered before falling back on the ground. Rei fell over him and began to bawl, while Takashi's grip on the bat tightened, his friend's last words along with Naruto's ringing loudly in his mind. Hisashi! No! Rei cried. Hisashi, she whispered. Rei. Takashi spoke as he gripped the bat with both hands. Let go of him. The teen saw his dead friend's hand twitch, meaning it was already over. The girl sprang up and gripped the taller teen's shirt tightly. No! You can't do it! He won't! Hisashi won't turn into one of them. He's different. Rei! Takashi's voice snapped her out of her rant, and she stared into equally brown eyes. Look at him! He ordered. Hisashi was now standing, although slightly hunched over, blood dripping down his jaw, and dead gray eyes staring into nothing. This can't be real, Rei mumbled. Takashi glanced at the girl behind him, and felt his heart ache. Would she act this way for me, I wonder? Shaking those thoughts away, he faced the person before him, someone he once called friend, before bringing the bat down on his head, crushing it in a show of gore, and just like that it was over. Takashi looked at his handiwork, and felt the need to swallow his upcoming throw-up. From behind him, Rei sobbed. Why, she asked, why did you do that? He was going to eat you if I didn't, Rei. The teen responded. Rei stood slowly, still shaking from her tears. I wanted us all to be okay, to make it out together. If Hisashi's going to leave me behind just because he got bit, then I want to become one of them too. Her words shook the teen to the core, his nails digging into his skin as he clenched his hand tightly. I don't think he would have wanted that. And what do you know, Takashi? There was a malice in her voice now. You were just jealous of Hisashi. You secretly hated him because we were together. She screamed. Those words cut deep, and Takashi had no response. Instead, he just turned and walked towards the barricade, something that scared Rei. What are you doing? She asked meekly. Going together will only cause problems. I'm going alone to fight them. He began to climb over the wall of stacked objects, only for a hand to stop him. No! You can't fight all of them by yourself. Stop! The pleading look in her eyes seemed to strike a nerve in the dark-haired teen. I'm sorry! I'm sorry! I didn't mean it! The teen fell from the barricade and faced the crying girl, the girl he loved, his bangs shadowing his face. "Please! I'm sorry! Let's go together," she whispered at the end. Just like that, she found herself in a strong and warm embrace, feeling safer than ever before. From above the telescope of the observatory, a puff of smoke was washed away by the wind. Naruto smiled as the memories of his clone rushed into him. He ignored the pain as he calmly walked through the piles of bodies, twirling the 2 kunai in his hand, his eyes closed as he whistled a small song. From all around him, infected began to approach, all with the intent of tearing into him, but the blonde continued to whistle. This world had just gone to hell. What this meant for me, I didn't know. What I did know is that there was no way I was going to die. I had new friends, new precious people to protect. They were my reason to exist now. My will to live, and I would die to defend them. The teen snapped his eyes open to show rippled eyes reflecting the faces of the deformed and dead before him. With a wild grin, he stopped twirling his kunai and extended his arms in a welcoming gesture. "Let's get wild," he cried. Chapter 5. The Great Escape. Carnage. It was all that could be said to sum up the ongoings of the campus, and one blonde-haired shinobi had a front-row seat to it all. The teen rushed past student and infected alike, taking down as many as he could while effectively saving any cornered teachers or students. "How many damn people are in this school?" he thought as he turned another corner. He had searched high and low for his pink-haired friend, and nothing came up. He even stopped to call her, but he was sure her phone was the last of her worries right now. The whiskered teen could feel himself getting tired. He had been running nonstop, and the use of his chakra was really starting to take a toll on him. The infection had spread almost everywhere from what he had seen when atop the astronomy club roof. His clone could see past normal distance with his Rinnegan activated. And all it picked up was fire, smoke, and corpses walking around ripping chunks off of other people. It was a literal hell. He hoped the makeshift barrier that he created over Shizuka's office was enough to keep her safe, although he was sure someone had already took it down by now. Channeling more chakra into his legs, the blonde winced at the pain but effectively ignored it, before disappearing from the normal eye's line of sight and moved at inhuman speeds throughout the school. If there was one place he knew everyone would meet up in, it was the main hall, so without a second thought, he moved even faster. "I need to hurry. They could all be in trouble." Shizuka sighed to herself as she watched her fellow college down a glass of water, a hollow look in her light brown eyes. "We're in trouble. Neither the police or the fire department are picking up. I examined one of the students who was bitten, and he was dead. Then he came back to life and tried eating me," she cried. Kyoko glanced at the busted blonde and sighed as well. She had just woken up from her shock-induced sleep a little while ago to all of the chaos going on. The ping-pong club's advisor repressed a shudder at the memory of her beloved being pierced by a kunai. She gripped the cup in her hands tightly as anger coursed through her being, anger at the blonde troublemaker who had saved her life. How dare he act so calm about it? She thought in a heated rage, taking my beloved's life, the only person who kept me sane in this world. Without him, I might as well have been dead. The woman inhaled deeply and calmed herself. Was she wrong for blaming the young blonde? No, she wasn't blaming him at all. There could have been a way to save Teshima, but because of the blonde, he was long gone, taking the last piece of happiness she had with him. While she was lost in her thoughts, she never noticed the other blonde's eyes studying her with interest. That look in her eyes, something must have happened. She might be suffering from more of the shock. The busted woman sighed. "Where is Uzumaki-kun when you need him?" From the other side of the school, the blonde shinobi sneezed as he sneaked by a group of the infected. Or was sneaking until he sneezed. "Damn it!" he cried loudly as they all turned to him. Realizing his mistake, the blonde let anime tears fall from his eyes as the walking corpses rushed to him. "Why, Cammy, why?" Back with the two women, Shizuka nodded her head to herself and moved to one of the cabinets that contained her first aid equipment, intent on having something to at least help anyone she could as they moved through the school. From behind them, a student who was sleeping peacefully not even 10 minutes ago was beating away at one of them who had breached through the window furiously, intent on protecting the two women behind him. Turning his head at the two, he growled to himself as he finished off the infected, one who had been a friend of his, and then spoke. "Hayashi-sensei. Shizuka-sensei. We need to get out of here," he cried desperately. That seemed to snap Kyoko out of her funk, and the woman stood suddenly, her breasts bouncing around, electing a blush from the student. The teen swallowed as the flesh moved around. Unfortunately, his moment was cut short as all the windows in the room exploded with multiple hands and bodies of the infected, each trying to make their way in. The young man screamed as one of them grabbed onto his shirt. The scream attracted more of their attention, which caused even more hands to grab onto him. His screams increased as one of the infected sunk its grotesque maw into his arm, ripping out a good chunk of meat. "Sensei!" he cried in pain. The two women watched on in shock as more of them bit into the young man, his screams increasing until finally, He found enough sense to pull back, wincing as more of his flesh was taken from him, before stumbling and falling to the ground. The infected continued to fight their way in, before the door finally busted and they swarmed. "I don't want to die like this," the teen whispered as he gripped his arm in pain. Kyoko and Shizuka could only look on in shock as the infected approached slowly. Before they could come any closer, however, long purple hairs swept through them, and in the span of 10 seconds, they all dropped dead, various wounds on their body, courtesy of the bakken in the hands of one female swordsman. The girl wore a modified version of the school uniform for girls, the skirt being longer, and going past her knees, as well as the shirt being baggier, but you could still tell of quite the body that was covered by the clothing. This was Seiko Busujima, senior and president of the Kendo Club. The older student moved to kneel before the injured male, and placed a hand on his shoulder before giving him a small smile. "I respect your courage in protecting Marikawa-sensei, as well as Hayashi-sensei. What is your name, sophomore?" The injured teen swallowed before speaking, the pain becoming even more intense. "Ishii Kazu," he managed to mumble. Seiko nodded, and looked deep into his eyes once more, ignoring the small blush that fell on the dying teen's face. "Kazu-kun, do you know what happens to those who are bitten?" she asked. The boy managed a shakily nod, while Shizuka and Kyoko continued to watch, the later remembering what Naruto had done to her lover. "Would you want your loved ones to see you that way?" "I have never killed anyone," however, she trailed off. Please do it," he mumbled out with a smile. Seiko gave a nod, and raised herself up before gripping her bakken tightly. Wait. What are you doing?" the busted blonde questioned. "Stop this. There must be a way to save him." Kyoko followed. "Please do not interfere. For all we know, there is no way to cure them, and this is his request. I must honor him." Without saying another word, she raised her wooden blade, and with expert handling, swung her hand, ending the boy's life and splattering blood on the opposite window. The two women cringed, but felt as if it was for the best. Well, one of them did. Turning away from the scene, Seiko bowed to the two older women and smiled. "I'm sorry you had to see that. My name is Seiko Busujima. You had quite the shield out there. I was going to remove to see if anyone was safe in here, but they beat me to it." "Shield?" Shizuka repeated. Seiko motioned for the two to look to the destroyed door, or more like the piles of bodies outside. "Oh, that must have been Uzumaki-kun," Shizuka chirped happily. "Uzumaki-kun?" questioned both women. One for the familiarity that she held with the blonde, the other because of what she had heard. Seiko had heard much about Uzumaki Naruto, the hellish prank king, the most interesting sophomore as some of her fellow seniors had called him. The young blonde was even rumored to be the reason why a local yakuza seemed to crash overnight, seeing as whenever one of the ex-members caught sight of him, they would rush off in fear. "Do you know Uzumaki Shizuka-san? You seem familiar with him," questioned Kyoko, her eyes narrowed. The blonde nodded with a happy smile on her face. "Yes, Uzumaki-kun has visited my office many times before. He also helps out at the local hospital," she responded. The answer seemed to satisfy the two, although it left the youngest with a unique curiosity. Moving her curiosity aside, Seiko slashed her bakken quickly at nothing, the blood spraying off of it, then turned to the older women. "We must go. It is not safe here anymore as most of the school has already fallen victim to whatever this disease is." With that, she moved towards the door, stepping over the dead bodies, and giving a small prayer in her head for the fallen. Without another word, Shizuka and Kyoko followed the girl. Saya sighed for what felt like the dozenth time today. She crossed her arms under her impressive bust as she watched Kota search throughout the room for anything they could use to defend themselves. The school grew eerily quiet, except for the random scream or groan. It was for the best, however. She suspected that the monsters reacted only to sound. She need only to test her theory. The other teen blinked as he watched his companion take on a thoughtful expression. "Ano, Takagi-san. What are you thinking about?" Now normally, the pink-haired girl would explode on the other teen, but her time with Naruto had mellowed out her anger, as she took on some of his carefree attitude. Although, she still had her moments. "Nothing. Keep searching," she responded with a glare. She still had some work to do though. Kota nodded quickly and started up his search again. The two had been running for a couple of minutes now, until Saya decided that since they were close to the engineering club's room, they could use some of their technology to defend themselves. How could he say no? He would do whatever as long as he could be safe. The teen's eyes drifted to the pink-haired girl once more. "She's so pretty," he thought to himself. Said girl caught him staring at her and had to repress an eyebrow twitch. They were in life and death situation, and yet he was still admiring her looks. "Men. Hirano. Come here, help me with something really fast." The teen did just that. He stood and walked to where the taller girl was. He peeked over her shoulder, as she was leaning over a desk overlooking something. That something happened to be an assortment of tools that they could effectively use to defend themselves. His eyes landed on the biggest of the tools, a gas-powered nail gun. Sez noticed and voiced her thoughts. Do you know what this is? Kota nodded. Yeah, it looks like the air-powered nail gun from Lethal Weapon 2. It's this movie I saw while I was away at. Yeah? Can we use it? Saya interrupted. No, if it's not the air-powered one, there's no point in taking it with us. The pink-haired girl gave a loud sigh. The sound of tapping alerted the duo to the window where more of them began to stack against it, their images hazy and hidden under the thick mirror, but the outline was clearly visible. A sudden strange look grew on Kota's face as he stared at the makeshift gun. There's one spare canister of gas, he mumbled to himself. Picking it up with his left hand, while simultaneously reaching for the sets of nails, he let a smirk fall onto his face. Saya began to sweat as they knocked on the window, their above-human strength causing cracks to form along the sturdy glass. Get up! We need to go now, Hirano! The male continued to ignore her as he pointed the nail gun, his eyes focused solely on the weapon. It's about 4 kilograms heavier, stability might be an issue. Saya felt her temper rise, and she grabbed on to the boy's shoulder, turning him to her, only to widen her eyes at the look he gave her, a small grin creeping on his face. Without warning, the undead slammed into the door and windows, pouring into the room. Shit! Hirano! Saya cried. Kota took action quickly. Using some tape, he wrapped it around the weapon to hold the nails in place. He then took a knee and aimed at the incoming walking dead. Put that drill, those nails, and the gas in a suitable place, he ordered. Saya growled. No one ordered her around, and just as she was about to speak, Kota fired. Each shot landing a heat shot, the corpses dropping to the ground one by one. Anything Saya had to say was dropped as she was more occupied with gaping at the other team. Shaking her head, she grabbed the bags and turned to Kota. Come on, we have to get out of here, she stated. The teen nodded his head, and the duo ran out of the room. Huh? Questioned the boy aloud as he looked towards the window, watching as water fell over it. Is it raining? He questioned aloud. Who cares? Keep moving, Saya repeated. The chubby teen nodded his head once more, and gripped the makeshift gun before taking off with her. As she ran, the pinkett let her thoughts wander to a certain whiskered blonde. Naruto, please be okay, she thought. The blonde's black coat fluttered lazily behind him as he waked calmly through another deserted hallway. It seemed as most of the undead began to center themselves in the lower levels, considering that's where most of the kids ran. Twirling his bloody kunai, the blonde took a step down the stairs, wincing as more of the putrid smells assaulted his senses. He could practically taste the blood. Man, so much for the arcade after school, he mused. Blue eyes suddenly widened. Shit. Morita! He cried out. The blonde ran to the nearby window, overlooking the dorms, only to see them overrun with the walking corpses, more students running around like chickens with their heads cut off, while some had already been captured and turned into a meal. Naruto slammed his fist on the window, his strength breaking it easily, but his hand bled from the glass. Morita, he whispered. What could he do now? His friend was probably one of them by now. No! Morita is a clever guy, I'm sure he's fine. Just need to focus, he told himself. Taking a deep breath, the teen weighed his options. I could send a shadow clone, but that would slow me down. If I run to the dorms, then I can save him, but then Takashi, Saya, Hayashi-sensei and Shizuka-san will be left without protection. Gritting his teeth, the blonde raised his fingers and in a puff of smoke, there stood a perfect replica of him. Fuck it. You know what to do, the blonde commanded. The clone nodded and jumped out of the window to the grounds below, before making a mad dash to the boys' dorm. Naruto closed his eyes and rubbed his temples as the familiar pain coursed through him. Focus on your breathing, relax, control your thoughts, control the pain. He remembered those words well, as the Kyuubi had told him that when he first started his Tenkai training. He swallowed the blood that was forced through his throat with a wince. Steeling his resolve, he walked slowly along the hall, glad that he could take a small break at least. I've wasted enough chakra. I haven't used clones in a year. My body needs to get used to the toll they take on my chakra. This rift energy needs to leave already. I'm barely at full power right now, not even 50% of my chakra is usable without killing myself. With a sigh, the blonde continued with his task. While he did that, the clone rushed through the courtyard, slashing and dashing at any of them that came near him. Boss says to find Morita, so if we know him like we do. He was probably trying to peep at the girls. Just as he was about to increase his speed, a cry caught his attention. Uzumaki-kun! The blonde turned to the sound only to see one of his most disliked teachers. He was a tall man with dark silky hair, Wearing a striped dark suit, his eyes were a yellow color, squinted and sharp, giving him a snake-like appearance, reminding him much of Orochimaru. This was Koichi Shido, and he, along with a one familiar face, were rushing towards him. Damn the honor we share, the clone whispered to himself. Shido, along with the two students he was with, caught up to him. He recognized the first as Yuki Miku, who was undoubtedly one of the most attractive girls in the school. However, she also had a reputation more famous than her looks. As Naruto's clone, he was never one for rumors, seeing as most of his creator's childhood, rumors were what kept him from making friends with the younger generation, so he didn't particularly believe them. The other was a male, tall and with brown hair. Although the top part was dyed blonde, he didn't quite know him very well as his name didn't ring any bells, but it didn't matter at the moment. What did matter was Morita, and these people were wasting his chakra and time. Uzumaki-kun, huffed out the teacher as he approached. I'm so glad you're safe. He spoke with a sickly sweet smile. The clone knew he shared Naruto's feelings, and he was right about feeling the need to wipe that smile off of his face. Shido-sensei. He nodded. Are you trying to escape as well? If you are, you're heading the wrong way. The teacher advised, smile still in place. The clone shook its head. No, I'm going to search for a friend of mine. Then meet up with a group, before getting out of here. He responded. That got a scoff out of the brown and blonde-haired teen behind Shido. Screw that, they can save themselves. He commented. And who are you? The clone of the blonde questioned. The teen seemed to not like the tone of his voice, as he stepped up to Naruto's face, being slightly taller than the blonde, and growled. Tsunoda is my name, you little punk, watch your tone. This world has gone to hell, so I would have no problem killing you. The taller teen roared. Lower your voice. The clone ordered. Tsunoda growled once more, and gripped the blonde by his shirt, before pulling him up in an impressive show of strength. Don't order me around, he roared. The clone sighed and gripped the teen's wrist, before squeezing tightly. The taller boy cried out in pain and let go of the blonde as he stepped back and held his wrist in pain. From the sidelines, Yuki and Shido watched the exchange with different reactions. This boy, he's strong and skilled. From the looks of his clothing, he must have been the one slaughtering these walking shit stains. I could use him, the older man thought, as he withheld a devious smirk. Yuki, on the other hand, watched the exchange with mild interest, mostly surprise. I'm sticking with them, because they seem to be the most likely to survive, and Tsunoda is one of the strongest guys around the school, but Uzumaki just swatted him like a fly. Maybe I should go with him instead, he seems a lot nicer than these two. The girl was cut out of her thoughts by the clone speaking. I said, lower your voice. The clone twirled the kunai in his hand and motioned to the now approaching undead. They react to sound, and you just attracted them with your unnecessary yelling. He finished. Tsunoda scoffed, but felt sweat form at his brow as the infected began to run, instead of walk, towards them. He was about to hightail it out, when an arm pushed him back on his behind. Stay behind me, the clone ordered. If it was up to me, I would leave you to die, but I'm his clone, so I can't. The blonde duplicate thought. Giving a sigh, it stopped twirling the kunai, before rushing off to face the approaching undead. What would happen next would shock the ongoing viewers. The blonde began to expertly dance around them, killing them swiftly and quickly. It was as if he had been doing it all his life. In under 10 seconds, all of them were on the floor in a pool of their own blood. Shido shouldn't help but shudder. If I have him on my side, the possibilities would be endless. I don't even think trained officers can fight like that. Tsunoda was quickly regretting his decision on messing with the blonde, as he witnessed the show of brutal yet effective slaughter. Yuki was seriously rethinking on who to travel with. The clone turned back to them, and shook his kunai of some of the blood, then with a small wave, turned back to the direction of the dorms, and just as he was about to take off, Shido spoke. Wait. Uzumaki-kun, come with us. You could be of great help. He bargained. The Naruto clone shook its head a no. Sorry, Shido-sensei, but I have a friend to save. The man growled to himself, but kept a clam smile on the outside. Come now, Uzumaki-kun. Be reasonable, what are the chances that your friend survived? The dorm is full of kids, there's no way he could still be okay. The clone did not respond, instead it turned and seemed to stare at something else, then it just gave another wave as it took off. Shido growled, and turned sharply to the two, his anger hidden expertly. Come, I'm sure he'll join us sooner or later, someone like that will not die easily. Tsunoda nodded, but Yuki was still watching the blondes retreating back. Mika-san, come, we must hurry. The snake-like man spoke. Yuki gave a hesitant nod, before turning to the duo and running along with them, although her mind was on something else. He looked at me, and I could tell exactly what he meant to say, she thought. Her eyes looked to the older man next to her. Stay away from him. Yuki couldn't help but shudder to herself. She had a choice: survive with them and lose her sanity and will, or die. Her fear of death was great, but what was a life controlled by another? The clone finally made it to the dorm, and seeing as the door was already busted open, made his way in. He ignored the bodies, unmoving or not, and rushed towards the girl's room, a feeling of anxiety rushing through his system, and this was unlike the time his creator, along with Morita and Takashi, snagged some peeks in the locker room either. Finally! It thought. Busting in, he ignored the randomly moving bodies of the undead girls, some clothed, some not, and chose to rush to the locker in the very center. It was a utility locker, large enough to fit around 4 or so people, and the physical ed instructor never let anyone in. Little did she know that with Naruto's help, and Morita's raging perverseness, they managed to convert it into their very own peep spot. The clone felt its heart pump, and as he used his creator's inhuman strength to rip open the locker, noises be damned, he was shocked to see a wincing Morita holding a wounded arm, leaning in the corner. "And Naruto!" he cried in shock. He seemed surprised to see the blonde, or what he believed to be the real blonde. The clone only gaped. Here was one of his first and closest friends, alongside Takashi. They were the big three. The inseparable trio. Now cruelly ripped apart. "And Morita," the clone whispered. The boss was not going to like this when he dispelled. The Mohawk teen gave a grin in response. "Hey buddy, looks like I got myself in a bit of a situation," he mumbled weakly, a strong cough tearing through him as blood spewed out. "Shit, man!" the clone exclaimed. Dropping one of his kunai, he rushed to his friend's side. "Morita! Fuck, man! Fuck!" the clone exclaimed. Said teen only waved his hands weakly, a small smile on his face. "See, can you believe it, man? Here I was minding my own business, sneaking into our spot, when this chick with her chest all out is walking towards me. Then all of a sudden, she bites my arm. What a bitch, right?" He chuckled at his own joke. The clone remained silent. "I've been watching everything that's been going on through the whole. I am going to turn into one of them if you don't kill me," he continued. The clone picked his friend up slowly and carefully, still not speaking. I remember that one time, when we jacked my dad's car and drove it around the sea city. Then we snuck into the strip club. Then Takashi drank for his first time, and he hurled all over one of the strippers. The clone finished. "Haha, then we hauled us out, and you got behind the wheel, and almost killed us all." Naruto hugged his friend as he moved his arm over his head, the kunai poised behind him. "Why yeah, I remember," the clone whispered. Hey, and Naruto, thank you for being my friend," he finished as his eyes closed. "No problem, buddy," the teen whispered in his ear, and in one swift move, jammed the kunai in his head, and disappeared in a puff of smoke. The real Naruto made his way through the last of the halls, finally reaching the lower levels of the school. He need only step down one more set of stairs and he would be meeting everyone soon, as he was sure this was the only safe way to escape. He knew Takashi, Saya, and Shizuka knew that. Just as he was about to take his first step, his eyes winded, and he was attacked by his clone's memories. The blonde felt his whole body shake, in sadness and in anger. "Fuck Morita!" he whispered. The whiskered teen growled, much like an animal would, and slammed his fist onto the wall, creating a dent in it. "Damn you, Shido! If you wouldn't have slowed me down, I could have saved him. I should have just left you to die," he cried in his mind. He could feel the rage bubbling up, along with the familiar energy that he has come to know as the Kyuubi's chakra. He would have lost it, had it not been for the familiar cry from below. "Die, you little shit! Die!" "Saya!" the blonde thought. Putting his grief away, the blonde rushed down the steps just in time to see his pink-haired friend jamming a screwdriver into the head of one of the infected, blood spewing all over her. "Shit!" he cursed. Ignoring everyone else around him, and the approaching dead, he scooped the shocked girl up bridal style, while also flicking one of the kunai he had up behind him, ignoring it as it blew through 2 of the undead before finally piercing the last one, making it tumble and fall down to the level below. "Saya! Are all right?" the blonde exclaimed. "And Naruto," the girl mumbled. Suddenly realizing the situation she was in, she grew a heated blush and pushed herself off of the teen, and gave him her back, crossing her hands under her ample chest once more. "Yes. Never touch me like that again." The blonde gave her a deadpan stare. "Yup, she's fine," he thought. "Uzumaki-kun, /Naruto!" was the cry from Shizuka and Takashi, both of them glad to see the blonde was safe. The teen turned to the duo and gave them a wide grin. It almost faltered, however, when he looked at Takashi, the memory of Morita still fresh in his mind. Something Shizuka did not miss. "Hey guys, the hero always arrives just in time," he stated. He was oblivious of the attention he had drawn to himself. That was an amazing show of precision. A certain purple-haired sword wielder thought he didn't even look, and he threw it with enough force to tear through bone and muscle fiber. Uzumaki-san, you truly are an interesting one, she mused. Wah! That's Uzumaki Naruto. #1 sophomore in all of Fujimi High, squealed Kota in a fanboyish kind of way. Saya felt her eyebrow twitch at the chubby boy's reaction. I suggest you never do that again, if you want to be friends with him, she whispered. Cursed Naruto and his unbearably bright personality, attracting widows to him like moths to a light. Kyoko felt rage bubble up inside of her at the sight of the blonde, and yet she also felt gratitude to him for saving her life. I can't get close to him. I wouldn't even be able to touch him with the kind of skill he just displayed. She grit her teeth, and took a breath to calm herself. I don't understand why I'm so mad. He saved my life. Her eyes darkened again. He killed my lover. Her inner turmoil was interrupted by the sound of more infected approaching. Naruto flicked his wrist, and his last kunai sprung to life. Look sharp, we've got company. I've got center. He spoke. Siko gave a nod. I shall take left. Ray! Takashi cried. Got it, we've got right. With that, the three were off. Siko quickly ended her side, while Ray and Takashi tag-teamed and tore through the infected in their way. Naruto, he was a bit different. He walked through the corpses, slashing randomly at them, but still somehow killing them, until only one stood in his way. The tension grew as the blonde's eyes got unnaturally cold. All eyes were on him as he bent low, and twisted the kunai in a reverse position. The whiskered teen tapped his foot loudly, and the last one of them reacted to the noise by rushing. In almost untraceable movements, Naruto stood behind it. Nothing seemed to happen, until blood gushed out from its head, and 2 arms, all 3 appendages dropping to the ground, followed by the body. Looks like you've just been. He reached into his coat, and pulled out a pair of black sunglasses, then with a snap, he placed them over his face, disarmed. Just like that, the tension was gone, and Takashi face planted while Saya face palmed. Shizuka giggled while Siko gave a small smirk, and Kyoko didn't know whether it was impressive, or just plain stupid. Kota, he was doing a very good impression of a worm as his eyes shone like stars. So cool! He cried. Naruto turned to Kota, and walked towards him, before kneeling down before him, the stupefied teen's expression reflecting on the dark glasses. Kota-kun, it's nice to meet you in person. I've heard a lot about your weapon skills from the local gun club. Suddenly, the background shifted into a familiar sunset with the waves crashing behind them. Uzumaki-san. Please call me Naruto. The waves became even more intense as the blonde stood, his arm extended out in a peace sign, while he flashed a smile that strangely twinkled. Come, Kota-kun. From now on, you are my apprentice. Kota felt anime tears of joy fall from his face. He nodded, and posed the same way Naruto did, the same twinkle in his teeth. From behind them, the words "you" sprung up, and 2 dolphins wearing identical green jumpsuits and matching bowl haircuts and butsy eyebrows danced in the water. Saya didn't know what was more horrible, the fact that that just happened, or the walking corpses she was leaning towards the scene before her. After the whole ordeal was over and done with, Siko turned to the now gathered group and gave a smile. Hello, my name is Siko Byasujima. Hayashi-sensei and Shizuka-sensei already know of me. Ray gasped, as she was standing in front of a living legend on campus. You won the national tournament last year. I'm Rei Miyamoto from Sojutsu Club. Kota, now snapped out of his daze, stood next to Naruto with a small smile, and spoke in a meek voice. I'm Kota Hirano from Class B. The blonde next to him gave a bright grin as he twirled the kunai in his hands. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, better known as the Prank King from Hell. He paused, and this little devil is Saya Takagi, resident genius and loudmouth. Over there we have Takashi Komuro. The teen finished with a grin. He ducked as the pinkette missed a swipe at his head, before sliding behind her and wagging his finger. Saya turned to him, and was about to speak when her own image caught her attention. The girl was soaked in blood, not as badly as Naruto or some of the others, but still, it was enough to make her feel dizzy. Oh my, look at me, I'm a mess. I'd better clean up before I go see my mother, she whispered. Then suddenly, it all came crashing down. She felt a strong pair of arms warp around her, and before she knew it, she was sobbing into the chest of the blonde Uzumaki. Everyone else watched, keeping a silence and respect for her. They were all losing their sanity slowly. It was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down on them as well. The small moment of rest was interrupted as more groans sounded from downstairs. It seemed like the body that dropped with Naruto's kunai lodged in its head made quite the ruckus, just as they did. Naruto glanced at Siko, the only other trained warrior in the premises from what he could tell, and gave her a nod, one which she returned with a small smile. Come on, Let's go upstairs and find somewhere to hide out at. We can plan an escape from there," he ordered. The group nodded, and as Saya pushed away and wiped her eyes, she couldn't help but blush. "I'm so pathetic. This is the second time he's seen me do this. When did my mission go from find out who Naruto was, to cry on his chest every time you feel bad?" "Hey," the blonde whispered. Golden brown eyes stared into deep blue ones, the glasses somehow gone, and she was suddenly reminded of that night. A much younger version of the blonde stood in front of her, a bullet hole in his shoulder, as he squeezed her hand tightly. "Everything is going to be all right," he spoke reassuringly. The same words he said to her a year ago. "Takagi-san! Naruto! Come on!" Takashi spoke as he and Rei, along with the others, waited patiently atop the stair leading to the upper rooms. Giving the Pinkett one last glance, the blonde gave her a small smile and motioned for her to follow. Nodding, the two ran upstairs, and once they were together, the group searched for some form of safe haven. In a matter of minutes, the group found themselves in a large room. Takashi leaned on the wall while Kota sat in a chair beside him, looking out the window to the outside. Naruto washed the blood away from his kunai in a nearby sink, while Shizuka was sprawled out over a desk, Siko beside her, a thoughtful expression on her face. Kyoko stood by the window next to Rei, who was busy staring outside as well. It was Takashi that spoke up first. "We need to get out of here. Hayashi-sensei or Shizuka-sensei, do any of you have your car keys with you?" the dark-haired teen asked. "No, I left mine in the ping-pong club's room," the brownish redhead replied. Shizuka, however, was busy searching through her small purse. A victorious smile fell over her expression as she pulled out a set of keys. "Right here," she stated. "Will your car be able to hold us all?" the sword wielder questioned. The victorious smile fell as quickly as it came. That seemed to answer everyone's question. "What about the buses?" Kota commented. "They're still here, and we have all the keys with us in this room." Naruto shut off the water and dried his kunai with a nearby rag, and with another flick of his wrist it was gone, back to its hidden location inside of his sleeve. "Seriously, how no one ever noticed you have a dangerous weapon on you at all times, I'll never know," Takashi commented with a smirk. Naruto gave a grin as he took to leaning on the wall next to him. "Trademark ninja secret." Takashi and Saya both groaned. "You still going on about that?" They both spoke. The blonde only held up a peace sign, and gave them a foxy grin. "I know, Komuro-san. Where would we go anyways?" the busted blonde questioned. The dark-haired teenager seemed to think it over before replying. "We go check on our families, then once we are sure they are safe, we try and find some sort of safe house. I'm sure the special unit and the police should have everything under control by then." As if on cue, the television that showed nothing but school announcements changed to the news, courtesy of the Disaster Awareness Center. All eyes fell on the woman who was standing on a random area of the city, behind her chaos. Due to large riots erupting all over the city and the nation, the regular emergency response has been neglected. When questioned on their ability to respond to this strange outbreak, the representatives gave no response. "Now here I am," and she was interrupted by the camera shaking, and a loud cry of pain, before the screen went blank. "What the hell? Why aren't they showing more?" Takashi questioned, his eyes wide. He wasn't the only one, everyone held their own degree of shock. This was more than just a simple virus, it was spreading faster than any of them could ever imagine. "They don't want to cause panic," the Pinkett responded as she adjusted her glasses. The television continued to relay the same message. "Stay inside, lock all windows and doors, and await further orders." It continued by updating viewers on the situation all over the world: the United States, the United Kingdom, Europe, South America, Africa, Australia, Asia, all have been contaminated. It was unbelievable. This is impossible. The disease is spreading like wildfire," Rei uttered, her eyes wide as she gripped Takashi's arm tightly. "If this is just like the Black Death and influenza, then we're in trouble," mumbled Saya. "The what now?" questioned the whiskered teen. They were two of the most horrible sicknesses ever to strike man. The Black Death alone wiped out 1/3 of the population of Europe. Kyoko responded, "You should have paid more attention in world history this year, Uzumaki." Naruto scratched the back of his head sheepishly. "She seems to have recovered well," he mused, "although, the way she looks at me, I'll have to keep my guard up around her." "How did they end?" It was Kota who asked the question this time. "They just disappeared. It seemed people had finally grown an immunity to them," Shizuka answered. "That's not going to work. This virus brings the dead bodies it kills back to life. So no one's is going to be building an immunity to that," the busted blonde finished. "So you're saying there's no cure?" Kyoko questioned, a slight look of madness crossing her eyes, although no one seemed to notice. "Who knows, the main priority right now is to survive, as a team," Siko finished. Naruto gave a smile to that, the words of his old sensei ringing up in his head. He quickly squashed those memories down, as they would do nothing but distract him at this point. Yash! He cried, slamming his fist into his open palm. Let's do this then. As a team. The others, even Kyoko, seemed to brighten up at this, and with that, everyone grabbed their stuff and rushed out of the room and into the hall. For a second, their positions froze, Naruto and Takashi in the front side by side, one with a serious expression while the other grinned like a fox. Siko and Kota behind them, each holding their respective weapons tightly, a small smile on the female, while a huge grin was placed on the male. In between them, Rei held her makeshift spear tightly, an expression of pure concentration on her face. Behind them, Saya, Shizuka, and Kyoko stood next to each other, the first adjusting her glasses while the blonde smiled brightly. The last of the three held a small and focused frown. With that, they were off. The group ran down the stairs to the second level, while Saya gave them helpful information. Guys, they react to sound, so be as quiet as possible. I'm sure most of you have realized that by now. Also, they're strong enough to rip a door off of its hinges, so melee combat is out of the question. Don't overdo it, we're just trying to escape, knocking them over is fine, only fight head-on if you have to. Right. The group chorused. As they reached the final set of stairs that lead to their escape, they noticed a small group of people, 3 boys, and 2 girls cornered by them. The boys had surrounded the 2 girls in an effort to protect them. Shit! Naruto cursed as he flicked his wrist, the now clean kunai springing to life once more. The action gave out an unspoken command and the 4 weapon-wielding teens charged down. Naruto stabbing the kunai into one of the male undead head, while Siko crushed another skull with her bakken. Takashi doing just as Siko did, but with his bat, while Rei stabbed her spear through one of the head of another, and Kota shot nails into the last one's brain, ending its life on the spot. Are you guys alright? The bat wielder questioned. Why yes. Thank you? One of the girls responded rather loudly. Lower your voice. Siko commanded softly, making the girl nod. Are any of you bitten? She asked. No. None of us are. The same girl responded. Rei looked them over before turning to the bakken wielder. They all look fine. She finished. Siko gave a nod, and motioned for Saya, Shizuka, and Kyoko to come join them. Ah man, I just cleaned this thing, the Jinchuriki whined as he looked on his now once again bloody kunai. Saya sighed as she walked past the blonde, and moved to look down below her. Naruto! She cried suddenly. The blonde blinked and moved to stand next to the girl. What? The pinkett pointed at familiar body near one of the large shoe lockers. On its head was the kunai Naruto had thrown not even half an hour ago. Baby! The teen cried as his eyes grew wide. He grinned as he ran down the steps towards the body, only for a slender hand to grab onto the back of his long coat. What the hell do you think you're doing? The girl genius whispered heatedly, all attention was on the 2 now. I'm getting my kunai back, they react to sound, as long as I'm quiet they won't even see me coming. He responded with a carefree grin. The girl sighed, and let go. Well, I guess we can test my theory with you. She finished. Takashi turned to the small group and gave them a smile. Would you like to come with us? The group nodded quickly, and the now larger group stood at the end of the steps, watching as the whiskered teen calmly waked over to the dead body, and pulled out his kunai, sweat dropping when he hugged it to his chest, not even caring about the stains. Doesn't he care that he just wiped someone else's blood on him? Kyoko thought to herself. Of course not. He's nothing but a killer. Why would he care? She responded to her own mental question, although more aggressively. Naruto turned to the group and gave a thumbs up. Giving a nod, they moved out, moving silently through the spacious room towards the double door. Naruto opened one of the doors, while Takashi opened the other, and the 2 held them open as the others rushed out into the open courtyard. Finally, the last of the survivors, one boy carrying a large metallic stick that was used mostly to hang things from, and just as they were home free, the end of the metallic object bumped against the door. Shit! The blonde cursed as all of the nearby infected reacted to the sound. Everyone, run! Takashi yelled. That was the final straw. Between the door and the yell, most of the infected had their attention drawn to them. The group took off in a dead sprint towards the bus, Naruto clearing a way before him, while Siko and Rei watched the sides. Takashi and Kota were behind, taking care of Nei leftovers. In the middle of them was Saya, Shizuka, and Kyoko, along with the unnamed students. Why did you have to yell? Saya hollowed angrily. Shut up and run, responded Takashi as he swung at another one of them. We're almost there, Rei cried, feeling relief course through her very being. A scream interrupted the moment as everyone looked back to see the makeshift leader of the group they had rescued being grabbed by 2 of the infected. Takuza! shouted the girl that was running along with Saya. "What the hell are you doing? You'll die." "I don't care," the girl hollered as she broke away from the group and ran back to her lover. "He's the only one I trust. What's the point of living if he's not there to live with me?" Saya was absolutely shocked by the logic, and watched in disbelief as the two hugged and kissed, even as the infected tore into them. Kyoko watched the girl and boy, and felt tears swell in her eyes, thoughts of her own lover invading her mind. "Now he's gone. I won't even have a chance to be with him." Because of Uzumaki, her anger grew as she glared at the blonde in front. All of her rage was gone in an instant as she looked into his eyes, eyes that in that very second reflected pain and loneliness, and a guilt that made her skin feel cold. Then, just like that, it was gone, replaced by an unyielding flame. She watched as the blonde began to tear into the infected even more wildly than before, moving ahead of the group and effectively securing a safe path. What just happened, she wondered. Naruto stopped at the doors of the bus, and hurried everyone on, his eyes still holding the fire. One by one, they ran in, finally feeling safe. Saya looked back to the scene and growled. "I don't understand. Why would she do that?" Shizuka sighed and turned to the girl. "I understand. If the world is really this bad, then I'd rather die with the person I love than live," the blonde explained with a sad smile. Kyoko felt a pang in her chest, and the anger was back. "You're supposed to be a nurse," the pink kid exclaimed. "Ano, Takagi-san, after all of this is over, will you finally consider going out with me?" Koda questioned meekly. From behind them, Siko smiled. "Oh my, I didn't know you two were that close, I'm envious," she commented with a smile. Saya just blushed, and turned away. From outside the bus, Naruto turned to the only person left outside with him. "Takagi, get in the bus," he ordered. "Naru. Get on the bus, Koda, if you can hear me, give me some cover. I'm about to clear a path for us," the teen spoke. Giving a hesitant nod, Takashi entered the bus, while Koda rolled down the window and positioned himself for maximum efficiency. "Start the bus, Shizuka-sensei," Ray cried. I don't know how. This isn't like my car." The busted blonde calmed her nerves and started the engine, before looking over the controls. "ABC," she mumbled while pointing to the controls. Once she was satisfied, she gave a happy nod, and turned to everyone. "We're ready to go," she hollered. From the outside, Naruto gave a grin and nodded, finishing off one more of them and turned to enter the bus, when a familiar voice cried out. "Wait! Uzumaki-kun!" Blue eyes winded, and flashed red, before settling back down. All eyes were now on the oncoming band of people, led by none other than the snake himself, Shido. "Who's that?" Koda asked. "Shido, from Class 3A, Siko replied, a small frown adorning her face. "Shido," Ray whispered with malice. Kyoko's eyes narrowed at the snake-like man. More than once had he tried making a pass on her. "Shizuka-sensei. Hold on," Takashi ordered as he made his way to the bus door. Ray grabbed the teen's arm and pulled him away, a fierce determination, with some hate in her eyes. "We're not saving him," the girl stated. "What? What the hell is wrong with you?" Takashi yelled. "That man, he's better off dead," the brown-haired girl responded just as loudly. Back outside, Naruto glared at the incoming man, his grip on his kunai tightening. "I should leave him to die," he thought darkly, "but he's got students with him. I can't let them suffer. Still, I could just cut him down now, and say he was bitten." Naruto shook his head, and sighed. "I'm starting to sound like Sasuke," he whispered to himself. Pumping chakra to his feet, the blonde took off towards the incoming group, surprising those already on the bus. "What the hell does he think he's doing?" Ray cried angrily. "The right thing," Takashi responded as he freed himself from her grasp and ran out of the bus to help. "Everyone! Hurry! They'll help us!" the snake-like man yelled as he pointed to the bus. He watched from the corners of his eyes as Naruto and Takashi cut down any of them attempting to end their lives. A small smirk made its way on his face. "Yes, assure my survival. You shall both be rewarded," he thought to himself. Once everyone was ahead, he turned and was about to run, when a hand grabbed onto his leg. Shido looked down to see one of the students he had taken under his protection wincing in pain. "Shido-sensei. Help! I twisted my ankle," the student whimpered. Shido glared coldly at him, but let a chilling smile fall onto his face. "I see, very well." Pulling his leg back, he slammed it on the student's face, grinning at the sick crack he heard from the now blooded face of the student. "This is where we part ways, my friend." With that, he was off, leaving the screaming teen to his death, as more of them approached. Naruto heard the teen's screams and turned to his direction and growled, Pushing even more chakra to his legs, he rushed towards the teen, passing a now livid Shido as he predicted the blonde's motive. Uzumaki-kun! There's no time. If we waste any more, we might all be in danger. At the words waste in time, Naruto felt himself stop, anger coursing through his veins. Time wasting. He thought enraged if he hadn't held me up. Morita would still be alive. He felt the Kyuubi's chakra burn his system, increasing his anger. Blue eyes turned to the still screaming teen, and then back to the bus, well aware that more and more of them were approaching. The blonde shut his eyes tightly, and glared at the suited man behind him. You can save him, but you'll be risking the lives of everyone else in the process. Shido's voice echoed out. From within the bus, Siko felt her eyes narrow, as did Reese. Both knowing full well, he was just toying with the blonde's already in turmoil mind. More of them were approaching, more than he could count, and in that second, the downed student screamed as they bit off his whole arm. Blue eyes widened at the scene before him. He was too slow, too indecisive once again, and once again, someone paid the price for his weakness. Gritting his teeth, Naruto turned to the bus and ran, his anger leaking out around him as he carved a brutal path of blood through any of the undead that stood in his way. He no longer was aiming for the head as arms and legs, heads, and everything else fell to the ground. To the viewers inside the bus, it was brutal. Once he was in the bus, he turned to Shizuka, a cold edge in his usually warm eyes. Go! He stated. The older blonde nodded and slammed her foot on the gas. They're not human, she whispered as she ran over them. Not anymore. From the end of the bus, clapping could be heard, and all eyes fell on Shido, a smile on his face as he stared at the panting and blood-soaked blonde. Well done, Uzumaki-kun, you truly are incredible. I'm glad you're safe. Naruto growled, but felt his exhaustion, both emotional and physical, kick in, and suddenly, he didn't have the energy to fight with the man before him. Shido smirked, and extended his arms. My, what a large group we have here. He commented in such times, we must be organized, therefore, I say we choose a leader. The smirk morphed into a grin. You're going to regret saving him, Rei mumbled as she passed Takashi and Naruto. Somehow, they both knew she was right. I had never felt more pathetic in my life. I could have saved both of them, and yet I let them die. All because of me. It made me sick to my stomach just thinking about it, and Shido, that bastard. The world really had gone to hell, and things had gotten rough. I needed to shape up soon, or else if I only knew how bad it would really get. What if Naruto has Sharingan in High School of the Dead? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.